Chapter 84. Is it only for these few days? What about the rest of the time? Won't you miss me? Shang Junlin was still not satisfied. Then what does your majesty want to think? I think of you every moment of every day. Shang Junlin hinted. Oh, I know. Shun Yu dragged her tone. Your majesty wants me to think of you all the time?
Yes.
Shang Junlin nodded reservedly. Shun Yu lifted her head from Shang Junlin's arms and smiled. Your majesty, do you know what you look like now? Shang Junlin was in a good mood after achieving his goal. He gently stroked Shan Yu's waist. What I look like is not important. You, don't forget what you promised me. What promise? Shin Yu was about to ask when she suddenly remembered that Shang Junlin was talking about what had happened just now. She bumped into the man's arms again and said in a muffled voice, I know. I will think of your majesty more every day. Shang Junlin put one hand on Shan Yu's back and stroked her long hair. He felt a sense of satisfaction. They stood under the waning lights, far away from the hustle and bustle, forming a world of their own. The harmonious atmosphere between the two did not allow anyone to interrupt. After quietly hugging each other for a while, Shang Junlin let go of Shun Yu, and the two continued to walk along the small path. After today's incident, the aristocratic families should be more relaxed about Fengjiai. After all, Shang Junlin had her weakness. Even if they opposed, they would not be as confident as before. I have given them some time to relax. It depends on what they choose. Shang Junlin's tone was emotionless when he mentioned the aristocratic families. I saw the girl from the Feng family just now. She was at ease in the crowd of students and was not restrained at all. The other people she interacted with were not as calm as her. Not wanting to spoil Shang Junlin's mood, Shin Yu casually changed the topic. Feng Jiai's attire today was more neutral. She didn't wear a woman's extravagant and complicated dress, nor did she wear too many red hairpins in her hair. This allowed people to know that she was a woman at a glance, and she didn't look out of place with the overall atmosphere of the Chonglin banquet. We have also noticed that she has a good relationship with the top scholar and the third flower. While sitting upright, Shang Junlin had been paying attention to the movements of the people below. Compared to the others, Feng Jiai was indeed more willing to talk to Jiang Huiqing and He Chengyu. Unlike the others, when the two of them conversed with her, they didn't act strangely because of her identity as a woman. Even if the others tried their best to restrain themselves, there would still be a trace of something wrong in their words and actions. The atmosphere of the banquet was lively. The students discussed their knowledge with each other, and the bolder ones would directly ask the officials questions. Some of the aristocratic officials were simply unable to sit still. The emperor could leave the banquet as he pleased, but they couldn't. Even if they were anxious to solve Yi Jiaming's matter, they could only sit there and force a smile. They couldn't show the slightest hint of abnormality. Lord Yi knocked on the table. Have you sent someone to deliver the news to the two officials? Don't worry, Lord Yi. I have already sent someone. Because their grades were close, Feng Jiai, He Chengyu, and Jiang Huiqing's seats were also close. Feng Jiai was attentive and noticed that there weren't many aristocratic officials present. She asked in a low voice, Did something happen just now? A few officials had strange expressions. Young Master Yi also didn't attend. I remember bumping into him when I just arrived. The matter was temporarily suppressed, so Jiang Huiqing couldn't say it out loud. He said in a low voice, He did something and happened to run into His Majesty. After a few sentences, the two sides naturally changed the topic. The other two cabinet ministers received the news from the Chonglin banquet and went to their usual meeting place to discuss in detail that night. The two cabinet ministers were from the aristocratic Feng family and Duan family respectively. They had a lot of authority among the aristocratic families in the capital. After taking their seats, the two of them dismissed the servants. Lord Feng asked, What does His Majesty mean by this? Lord Duan said, It's obvious that His Majesty is forcing us to make concessions. Otherwise, based on His Majesty's usual temperament, he would have dealt with them on the spot without giving us any time to react. Lord Feng said, That's true. His Majesty is still the same as before. He won't listen to advice. Lord Duan said, If he could listen, then he wouldn't be him. Have you forgotten what happened when he just ascended the throne? The previous emperor wanted him to leave Prince Yu in the capital to recuperate. He ignored the objections of the officials and directly sent him away. How many officials did he deal with back then? Lord Feng said, Prince Yu is also an incompetent person. Otherwise, why would we be in such a difficult position? Lord Duan said, if it were up to me, he had wanted to kill Prince Yu for a long time. This time, when Prince Yu was imprisoned, he took advantage of the fact that no one could refute and directly pin the mastermind behind the fraud on Prince Yu. It's extremely difficult for Prince Yu to turn the tables. Lord Feng said, they contacted us and said that they want our help. Should we do it? Lord Duan said, there's no hurry. We'll have to wait until the end to see the results. Lord Feng said, then what about the imperial examinations this time? Are we really going to do as he wishes? Lord Duan said, what else can we do? He's determined to promote people from humble backgrounds to go against us. Now, he's even allowed women to enter the imperial court as officials. Sooner or later, he'll destroy his own Great Wall. The next morning, during the discussion about women entering the imperial court as officials, there were fewer objections. Other than Feng Jiai's position, everyone else's positions were more or less decided. As the weather became warmer and warmer, Xinyu spent more time outside the house. Imperial physician Gu also said that it was appropriate for him to walk outside more. Shang Junlin was very concerned about Shen Yu's matters. After hearing Imperial physician Gu say that it was good for Shen Yu to walk outside more often, he would take Shen Yu outside whenever he had time. Shang Junlin originally wanted to let Shen Yu practice martial arts to keep fit, but Shen Yu flatly refused. After being reborn, he only wanted to be as comfortable as possible. In the evening, after finishing dinner, Shang Junlin put down his work and held Shen Yu's hand to take a walk in the small garden outside Yuzhong Palace. Feng family and Duan family? Shen Yu's footsteps paused. He had an impression of these two families because in his previous life, these two families had secretly sought refuge with the King of Yu. Before the King of Yu ascended the throne, they had done a lot of things for him. The Feng family and the Duan family have actually been entrenched in Dahuan since the founding of Dahuan Empire. However, their real heyday was during the late period of the previous emperor's reign. At that time, the previous emperor favored treacherous officials and allowed the power to fall into the hands of the aristocratic families who had been eyeing them covetously. The Feng family and the Duan family benefited the most. Seeing that Shen Yu was interested in the Feng family and the Duan family, Shang Junlin explained more. When I first ascended the throne, I dealt with a lot of people. The Feng family and the Duan family were very sensible, so I couldn't do anything to them. At that time, the imperial court was too chaotic. First, the previous emperor had caused a lot of trouble. Capable officials were either forced to resign or were framed and executed. Those who were left behind were mostly in cahoots with the treacherous officials. Shang Junlin's foundation in the imperial court was not stable. He had seized the throne with military power, and there were very few people who could be used. After massacring those treacherous officials who had caused chaos in the imperial court, there was a large gap in the number of officials who could be used. Shang Junlin had no choice but to temporarily use the officials from the aristocratic families who were relatively obedient. However, the consequences of doing so were endless. The aristocratic families and the imperial power would fight. If the aristocratic families were the most powerful, the imperial power would definitely be threatened. After ascending the throne, Shang Junlin attached great importance to the imperial examination and used the officials from humble families. This was also to balance the power of the imperial court. Only when the various powers kept each other in check could long-term stability be maintained. Right now, the Prime Minister is the only person in the cabinet who is not a member of the aristocratic families. The aristocratic families occupy two positions in the cabinet. Who does Your Majesty intend to use to replace one of them? Shang Junlin's intention was to ruthlessly suppress the aristocratic families. Feng Jun, the Prime Minister, and official Feng are both in the cabinet. If both of them are in the cabinet, it will be much more convenient for Your Majesty to do whatever you want. Xinyu lowered his eyes and pondered. With the book he had read in his previous life and the information he had obtained from Shen Qingran, as well as the help of Xinyu in this life, he would definitely be able to bring out many new things that would be beneficial to the development of Dahuan. If the aristocratic families were to obstruct him, these things might become a sharp weapon for the aristocratic families to seize power. In his previous life, Shen Xingran had brought out many things that had benefited the aristocratic families. The aristocratic families had become stronger day by day and had made a mess of De Huan. Shen Yu did not want to make a wedding dress for the aristocratic families. A Yu's proposal regarding the reform of the business system has not been announced to everyone yet. Before the time is right, we still need to wait. There's no need to rush. Every major change cannot be completed overnight. Moreover, the cement issue has only just begun. It will be more foolproof if there are no other problems. A Yu still understands me. Shang Junlin sighed. Your Majesty, when will Jiang Huiqing's appointment be announced? Shen Yu wanted to see what kind of path Jiang Huiqing would take in this life without those accidents. Soon. If there are no accidents, these two people will be able to enter Hanlin Academy. Although the official position at Hanlin Academy would not be too high, what was more important was the significance of this starting point. Entering Hanlin Academy was equivalent to taking half a step into the cabinet. Jiang Huiqing had a good attitude. Even though he had not been officially appointed because of Fang Jiai's matter, he was still happy every day. Qingyu had sent a letter to his family saying that he was the top scorer in the imperial examination and would not be able to return to Jiangnan for a while. Even if he were to be transferred out in the future, he would not be sent to Jiangnan as an official. After dealing with his own matters, Qingyu came out of his room. Huiqing, didn't you say that you did not have enough paper and pen last time? A new shop opened in Beijing. Do you want to take a look? Jiang Huiqing was sorting out his and Qingyu's books. The spring sun was good, so he took them out to dry in the sun. The place to dry the books almost occupied the entire small courtyard. These books were brought from home, and some were bought after coming to Beijing. Jiang Huiqing heard the sound and turned around. Yes, he did not have enough paper and pen. These days, Qingyu had given him some. Jiang Huiqing was embarrassed to keep taking advantage of Qingyu. Under the sun, the young man's jade-like body was even more dazzling. Qingyu was dazzled. He pursed his lips and walked over. Shen Yu fell into a dream of his previous life. He had not dreamed of his previous life for a long time. He did not know if it was because he had been thinking about his previous life recently that he had such a dream. In the dream, it was a rainy day. He was lying on the bed. The quilt seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, making him unable to breathe. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of footsteps was getting closer and closer. Shen Yu struggled to open his eyes. He saw Prince Yu, who had changed into an imperial robe, standing by the bed and staring at him with dark eyes. Shen Yu, you see, no matter how unwilling you are, we will still ascend the throne. You cannot change our destiny. No, that's not right. Shen Yu struggled to get up, but he could not move. He was so frightened that he broke out in a cold sweat. Yu, wake up! A familiar voice came through the heavy rain. Shen Yu struggled to open his eyes. He was startled by the face that suddenly enlarged in front of him. Seeing the fear in his eyes, Shang Junlin moved back a little. He reached out and stroked his sweat-soaked hair. Yu, why are you so afraid of us? Chapter 85. Don't you know whether I'm afraid of your majesty or not? Shen Yu leaned against Shang Junlin's palm and slowly calmed down the palpitation caused by the dream. He didn't know why he had this dream, or if this dream was a sign of something. He only knew that in this life, he wouldn't let the ending of his previous life happen again. If he could change the ending of the book once, he could change it a second time. I know that Yu is not afraid of me. In this world, I'm afraid that only Yu is not afraid of me. Shang Junlin helped Shen Yu get up. What nightmare did Yu have that made you scared when you saw me? It was indeed a nightmare. In the dream, Prince Yu was wearing clothes similar to Shang Junlin's. So when he woke up and saw Shang Junlin dressed similarly to Prince Yu in his dream, he couldn't tell if he was in a dream or had already woken up. Is it raining? Shen Yu looked at the window. It was clearly afternoon, but the room was dark. There was a faint sound of rain coming from outside. It overlapped too much with the scene in his dream. Shen Yu was a bit absent-minded. It started raining after you fell asleep. I helped you up. Do you want me to call for hot water? Shen Yu's forehead was sweating a lot. Shang Junlin just touched his forehead and found that his hair was also wet. Xinyu loved cleanliness, so he must be uncomfortable. Xinyu felt that his body was indeed uncomfortable. He didn't know how much sweat he had in his dream. His inner shirt was soaked and stuck to his body. It was very uncomfortable. Yes, I want to wash. Xinyu seemed to be exhausted by the struggle in his dream. His hands and feet were weak, and he staggered when he got up. Mengchong, prepare the hot water. Shang Junlin ordered, took a fox fur coat and directly wrapped Xinyu up. Be careful not to catch a cold. Xinyu's whole body was wrapped in fur, only revealing her face. Her fair face was dyed with a faint layer of crimson. In contrast, her lips were so light that they were almost transparent. Shang Junlin held him in his arms and held his cold hands. He said worriedly, "Let Imperial Physician Gu take a look at you?" Xinyu nodded indiscernibly. He was still very tired. After more than 2 hours of nap, because of a dream, it was even more tiring than not sleeping at all. Xinyu was nestled in Shang Junlin's arms. Her eyelids were drooping. From afar, she looked like she was about to fall asleep. Eunuch Ming asked the palace servants to prepare hot water and gently knocked on the door. "Your Majesty, the hot water is here." It was the first time he had asked for hot water in the middle of the day. Eunuch Ming didn't know the specific situation in the room, so he didn't dare to rashly enter. Shang Junlin's voice came from inside the room. "Come in."
Yes.
Eunuch Ming turned his head and warned the palace servants who were carrying the hot water. "When you enter, be smart and keep your head down. Don't look at what you shouldn't look at. If you violate His Majesty's taboo, don't blame me for not reminding you." "Yes, yes." The palace servants responded timidly. They served in Yuzhong Palace and experienced several bloody storms. Later, with Eunuch Ming Jr.'s exhortations, they didn't dare to have any thoughts that they shouldn't have. After giving the order, Eunuch Ming gently opened the door and led the palace servants in with his head down. There was a screen in the room, so the situation on the bed couldn't be seen. Eunuch Ming asked the servants to put down the bathtub. He was about to leave when Shang Junlin stopped him. "Mengchong, go to the Imperial Hospital and ask Imperial Physician Gu to come over." Eunuch Ming was shocked. Why did they need to ask for an imperial physician? No matter how confused he was, he wouldn't ask. He replied, "I'll go now. No need to leave anyone to serve. Take them out."
Yes.
Eunuch Ming couldn't get much information from Shang Junlin's tone. He didn't dare to be careless and immediately did as he was told. After taking the servants out, he bumped into Mu Shi, who was carrying medicine. "Eunuch Ming, what's the matter?" Mu Shi asked when she saw Eunuch Ming in a hurry. "It's Miss Mu Shi. Are you going to deliver medicine to Gu Jun? Don't go in yet. Wait for His Majesty to summon you." Eunuch Ming stopped and thought about the possible situation in the room. Did something happen? Mu Shi suddenly became nervous. "Miss, don't be nervous. His Majesty just ordered hot water. I'm afraid it's not very convenient now. It's noon, why?" Mu Shi suddenly realized something and her face turned red. "I understand. Thank you for your reminder, Eunuch Ming." Eunuch Ming saw that she understood and hurriedly went to carry out Shang Junlin's orders. Shang Junlin carried Xinyu to the bathtub and tested the temperature of the water with his hand. "The temperature of the water is suitable. I'll put you in." Xinyu nestled in Shang Junlin's arms and nodded very gently. Shang Junlin peeled her out of the fox fur coat and slowly put her in the water. Xinyu leaned against the edge of the bathtub and soaked in the hot water. She gradually relaxed. There was more color on her lips and her skin turned light pink from the heat. Shang Junlin took a handkerchief and carefully wiped Xinyu. Xinyu's skin was very white. It was the kind of white that was lustrous and smooth. It was like the best mutton fat white jade. It was also very tender. A light touch would leave a mark. Shang Junlin had once imprinted plum blossoms on it, but now the flowers had disappeared without a trace. His fingers brushed past it, and through a thin handkerchief, Shang Junlin could feel the gentle touch of his skin. After recovering a little, Xinyu crossed her arms on the edge of the bathtub and rested her head on her arms. "I'm afraid that I'm the only person in the world who can make your Majesty personally bathe. The water is getting cold. Do you want to continue adding hot water, or come out?" Shang Junlin put the back of his hand on Xinyu's forehead. Her body temperature was normal. I don't want to bathe. Xinyu felt that she would faint again if she was steamed for a while. Shang Junlin carried her out of the bathtub, dried her, put on a clean inner garment, and wrapped her in the fox fur coat. Xinyu stopped Shang Junlin from putting her on the bed. I don't want to lie on the bed anymore. Your Majesty, please help me put on an outer garment. I want to go out for a walk. Shang Junlin paused for a moment. Okay. After taking a bath and changing into a clean set of clothes, Xinyu felt much more comfortable. Shang Junlin ordered the palace servants to remove the hot water. Mushi came in with the warm medicine. Xinyu drank it in one gulp. Shang Junlin fed him the candied fruit. I seem to be fine. I don't need Imperial Physician Gu to come again. Xinyu carefully felt her body. There were no symptoms of discomfort. Shang Junlin was still worried. Let Imperial Physician Gu take a look. Your Majesty, Imperial Physician Gu is here. Eunuch Meng's voice sounded outside the room. Since Imperial Physician Gu was here, Xinyu did not refuse anymore. Eunuch Meng hinted at Imperial Physician Gu on the way. When he entered the room and saw Xinyu, he knew that it was not the case. After carefully checking her pulse, he gradually frowned. Xinyu originally thought that she just had a nightmare and was fine. But seeing Imperial Physician Gu's expression, it seemed that was not the case. Shang Junlin's heart sank. He asked directly, "Is there something wrong with your body?" "Something is wrong with your pulse." Imperial Physician Gu pondered for a moment. "Has there been any abnormalities in your body during this time?" Xinyu thought carefully and replied, "I just had a nightmare. Nothing else." "Your pulse has some changes compared to before. I still need to study it. For the time being, there won't be any problems. I will prescribe a sedative medicine. Your Majesty still needs to rest well. If you continue to be troubled by nightmares, it will not be good for your body." Imperial Physician Gu prescribed the medicine and handed it to the palace servants. "I need to study your condition more. I will come to check your pulse every day for the next few days. Is it convenient for you?" "Do as Imperial Physician Gu says." Before Xinyu could answer, Shang Junlin spoke first. Xinyu wanted to say that there was no need to go through so much trouble. But when he saw the worry in Shang Junlin's eyes, he swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. It was still raining outside. Xinyu wanted to walk outside. Shang Junlin held an umbrella with one hand and held his hand with the other as they strolled in the rain. A gentle breeze blew, bringing with it a burst of coolness. In the real world, there was no dull feeling like in the dream. Even walking in the rain gave them a different feeling. The sudden spring rain caught many people off guard. After all, no one expected that it would suddenly rain when the sun was shining brightly in the morning. Jiang Huiqing looked at the rain falling outside the window. He tugged at Chengyu's sleeve. "Brother Chengyu, our books won't get wet, right?" He decided to hang out the books because the weather was good today. Who would have thought that it would rain when they just arrived at the newly opened Study Sibao store? At that time, Jiang Huiqing wanted to turn around and go back. However, Chenyu stopped him and said that the servants at home would take the books back. Even if he went back now, there was nothing he could do. Only then did he give up the idea. It won't happen. Even though he didn't know how many times he had asked, Chenyu still replied with a good temper. "I know you treasure those books. I'll let someone take care of them." In fact, things like hanging out the books could have been done by the servants. However, Jiang Huiqing refused and insisted on doing it himself. Chenyu couldn't persuade him and had to let him do it. "I'm almost done choosing. Brother Chenyu, how about you?" It had to be said that the store Chenyu recommended was really good. The brushes, ink, paper, and inkstone were all of high quality and the prices weren't too expensive. Jiang Huiqing bought more than he expected. "Let's wait for the rain to lessen before going back." Jiang Huiqing looked at the rain outside and nodded. There was a designated resting area in the store. The two of them sat for a while and waited for the rain to lessen before leaving. They didn't bring an umbrella. They borrowed it from the owner and only had one. Fortunately, the umbrella was big enough to cover the two of them. Chenyu held the umbrella in one hand and the things he bought in the other. Seeing that Jiang Huiqing was some distance away from him, he said, "Huiqing, stay closer to me. Otherwise, you'll get wet." Jiang Huiqing looked up and saw that the umbrella above his head was leaning towards him. Chenyu, who was holding the umbrella, had his shoulder wet. He hurriedly leaned towards him. Brother Qingyu, why didn't you say so earlier? Look at your shoulder. It's wet. It's okay. You didn't get wet, did you? Qingyu laughed softly. You're still laughing. Forget it. I'll lean closer to you. Don't move the umbrella over my head again. Looking at the young man who was leaning against him, Qingyu whispered, okay. The conversation between the two of them gradually disappeared in the curtain of rain. After the heavy rain, the world looked brand new. Everything seemed to have been washed. Xinyu and Shang Junlin strolled in the rain and felt that the rain was getting lighter. Xinyu's mood, which was affected by the nightmare, gradually recovered. Thinking of the man who was silently accompanying him, Xinyu stopped. What's wrong? Shang Junlin also stopped. Xinyu looked at Shang Junlin. The man had similar facial features to the king of Yu in his dream, who was wearing the same imperial robe. However, the feeling he gave was completely different. In the hazy rain, Shang Junlin heard the young man's voice clearly. He said, Your Majesty, do you want a kiss? Chapter 86. Shang Junlin's gaze suddenly became aggressive. He didn't answer. Instead, he lowered his head and captured the young man's lips. It tasted as sweet as he remembered. The man sucked on Shun Yu's lips with a little force. His breath was heavy. He held one hand behind Shun Yu's head, not giving him any chance to regret. The kiss was long and powerful. Xin Yu didn't want to fall behind. He welcomed it and danced with it. He didn't know when his hands had tightly grasped the man's clothes. His body leaned back slightly, and his head was forced to raise to withstand the man's increasingly fierce attacks. Xin Yu didn't close his eyes. He could see the man's enlarged face, and through the corner, he could see the umbrella above his head. The patterns on the umbrella seemed to be spinning. Everything in front of him became strange and variegated. The force on his lips was getting stronger and stronger. Shun Yu slowly closed his eyes and took the initiative to wrap his arms around the man's strong waist. Under the hazy drizzle, a green umbrella covered the beautiful scenery. Eunuch Ming and Mu Shi were far behind them. They could only see the two people closely together and the umbrella firmly covering them. The kiss lasted for an unknown period of time. Shun Yu was slowly released. The man didn't withdraw. His breath was close to Shun Yu's lips. Xin Yu woke up from the strange and variegated illusion. He didn't push Shang Junlin away. Their breaths were intertwined. An umbrella separated them from the outside world. At this moment, he didn't have to think about anything. He didn't care about anything. There was only him and Shang Junlin left in the world. He could let himself be temporarily immersed in this small world. The man's breath drifted on Shang Yu's face. As the man's kisses fell little by little with a sense of comfort, Shun Yu's heart gradually calmed down. The continuous rain couldn't extinguish the affection under the umbrella. In the end, Shang Junlin was worried that Shun Yu would catch a cold and took the initiative to go back to the room. Xin Yu had stayed outside for long enough. He didn't object. The rain stopped and the sun hung high in the sky again. Xin Yu raised his hand to cover his eyes. This weather is really interesting. He remembered that before he took a nap, the sun was also high in the sky. After the rain, the sun had returned, as if the sun had also rested for a while in the afternoon. Shang Junlin closed the umbrella and handed it to Eunuch Ming behind him. He reached out to touch Shun Yu's clothes and felt relieved when he saw that they were not wet. Your Majesty is wet. Although the black clothes were not obvious, Xin Yu could still see that the man's shoulder was wet. Your Majesty, please change your clothes first. Eunuch Ming hurriedly brought some clean clothes over. Shang Junlin saw the concern in Shun Yu's eyes. He swallowed the words of rejection that were on the tip of his tongue and went to the side to change his clothes. Shang Junlin had changed his clothes and came out. He hugged Xin Yu and asked with a smile, You? Were you concerned about us just now? It's not good if your Majesty catches a cold because of me. Xin Yu leaned back and felt the constant heat from the man's body. She narrowed her eyes. The two talked for a while. Eunuch Ming walked in and said in a low voice, Your Majesty, official Feng and official Duan request to see you. The battle between the aristocratic families and the imperial power should come to an end. Your Majesty, please go ahead. I'll read a book by myself. Xinyu had recovered and was not as dependent on Shang Junlin as a young bird that was left alone. Shang Junlin saw that he was not reluctant and said, "I'll go for a while. I'll come back to accompany you when I'm done." The sky had completely cleared up. The heavy rain just now was like a dream. Thinking of the young man who took the initiative to be enthusiastic in the rain and fog, Shang Junlin was in a good mood and raised the corners of his lips. When they arrived at the imperial study, Shang Junlin returned to his usual unapproachable appearance. Eunuch Ming saw this change and cried out in his heart that there was only one noble lord who could soften his majesty's heart. Official Feng and Official Duan knew that since they took the initiative to look for Shang Junlin, it meant that the aristocratic families were willing to lower their heads. They had lost this confrontation. "Why did you come to see me?" Shang Junlin sat on the high seat and looked down at the two old cabinet ministers. The two knelt down and saluted. After they got up, they said, "We came for the matter of the Chunglin banquet. You know about it too?" Shang Junlin supported his forehead with one hand. "Tell me, how do you plan to deal with it?" After Yi Jiaming and the others were taken away, they were locked up in solitary confinement and no one was allowed to visit them. Shang Junlin also did not give orders on how to deal with them. The aristocratic families could not sit still and had to ask the two cabinet ministers to come forward. Official Feng and Official Duan also knew that this matter could be big or small. It all depended on Shang Junlin's decision. They could not understand Shang Junlin's thoughts and did not know where to start. "Your Majesty, what those juniors did was indeed inappropriate. We also investigated and found that they did not do anything to anyone. It was just that there was some conflict between the two parties. What they were most thankful for now was that these people had not really done anything. No matter what they said or what plan they had, as long as it was not implemented, there was still room to turn things around." Shang Junlin did not interrupt the two of them and let them finish speaking. He said, "So, according to you, I am making a mountain out of a molehill? This subject does not dare. This subject knows that these juniors' actions were inappropriate. However, when we meet in the imperial court in the future, the misunderstanding must be resolved. Your Majesty, why not give them a chance to resolve the misunderstanding face to face? If everyone is like this, how can the imperial court establish its prestige? I believe that the two of you do not want to see the day when you are disrespected, right?" The more Shang Junlin remained silent, the heavier the stone in Official Feng and Official Duan's hearts became. Although they had guessed before coming, they still wanted to struggle until the last moment. The conversation lasted for a full 4 hours. When Official Feng and Official Duan came out of the imperial study, the sky was already dark. The two of them looked at each other and saw the bitterness in each other's eyes. In the end, Shang Junlin was out of their control and became an emperor that they could not easily shake. The two of them did not return to the residence directly. Instead, they went to the place where they usually gathered. Some words could only be said in private. In the end, we underestimated him. From the beginning, we should have known that some people are destined to be uncontrollable. Official Feng sighed deeply. Official Duan frowned. But at that time, other than this one, we had no other choice. The King of Yu's foundation was too shallow and was no match for him at all. Not to mention the other princes. Those who had the strength to fight were all gone. The remaining princes were even worse than the King of Yu. Official Feng, what should we do now? Official Duan, what else can we do? The words have already been said, so we can only follow his wishes. However, there is no need to worry. We are not the only ones who are not willing to let a woman enter the imperial court as an official. Let's wait and see. There are so many people in the world. There will only be more and more who will oppose it. How could Xinyu and Shang Junlin not think about the problem that they were thinking about? A woman entering the imperial court as an official was a shocking matter for the Great Huan dynasty. Only a few people would accept it. However, some things could not be given up just because there were not many people who would accept it. The process of starting from scratch was difficult. Since ancient times, there was no exception. From the moment they made a decision, they were prepared to face all kinds of doubts. After Jiang Huiqing and He Chengyu returned to the residence, just as He Chengyu had said, the servants were nimble and his treasured books were not drenched. After tidying up the books, Jiang Huiqing took out the rice paper, brush, and ink that he had bought today. Thinking of what he had heard in the shop and this encounter, he picked up the brush. By the time he reacted, he had already written a few pages of paper. Jiang Huiqing stared at the words on the paper and held his forehead. Since he had already written it, he might as well send it over. Xinyu leaned on the soft couch and was lost in thought. He thought of something and called Mu Shi. Last time, you said that Xinyu agreed. What has she been doing recently? She has recently developed a lot of new things that the imperial concubine likes very much. She even sent some to the palace. Does young master want to take a look? Bring it over and let me see. Mu Shi went out and gave an order. Not long after, the palace servants came in with a few things. Miss Xinyu said that this is a soap used to clean your hands. Mu Shi picked up a square object from a wooden box and introduced it to Xinyu. Xinyu took it over. There was a faint fragrance on it, and it smelled very good. Mu Shi introduced some other items, all of which were daily necessities that were convenient for living. Let's go to the imperial concubine's palace to take a look. Xinyu got up. Shang Junlin was busy with official business. He had nothing to do in Yuzhong Palace, so he might as well walk around. The palace where the imperial concubine lived was some distance away from Yuzhong Palace. Unlike the bustling Yuzhong Palace, this palace reflected the word simple and elegant from inside to outside. The imperial concubine, who had received the news, came out with the palace servants to welcome them. After greeting them, the imperial concubine led them into the main hall. I came here on a whim. Sorry to disturb you, imperial concubine. Xinyu looked at the woman with simple and elegant makeup. The imperial concubine was in her 40s and had taken good care of herself. There were not many traces of age on her face. Perhaps it was because of her temperament that she gave off a very peaceful feeling. It was such a gentle and harmless woman who had lived peacefully in the previous emperor's harem until today. Not at all, not at all. Are you here for Xinyu? The imperial concubine called Xinyu over. Yes, I saw the things sent to Yuzhong Palace and felt that they were very novel, so I came to take a look. Xinyu did not hide his true intentions. Are you talking about the things Xinyu made? Xinyu likes to make novel things since she came to my palace. It's her good fortune to be valued by you and His Majesty. The imperial concubine's tone was full of protectiveness for Xinyu. Don't worry, imperial concubine. She made those things, so she will get what she deserves. Xinyu had always been fair in his rewards and punishments. He would not and disdain to take other people's credit. Xinyu took out the things she had prepared in advance and handed them to Xinyu. These things were sorted out according to what she knew in her previous life. She was not sure what was useful and what was not, so she simply wrote them down and handed them to Xinyu to decide. Xinyu did not stay for long. He took the things and said a few words to the imperial concubine before leaving. After returning to Yuzhong Palace, Xinyu looked through the things Xinyu had sorted out. They were different from what he remembered in his previous life. Xinyu had written things that were convenient for daily life, especially for women. As for how to use these things, he had to discuss with Shang Junlin. Just as he was thinking, he saw Shang Junlin walk in. What is you looking at? Shang Junlin walked to Xinyu and asked. Looking at the things Xinyu sorted out. Xinyu leaned over and made room for Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin leaned over and hugged Xinyu from behind. He looked at the contents of the paper beside Xinyu's hand and said, Is this the reason why you treat Xinyu differently? Doesn't your majesty think that these things are very useful? Xinyu asked. Shang Junlin lifted a strand of Xinyu's hair and said, They are very useful. But how did you know that Xinyu could give these things? Chapter 87. Your Majesty, just treat this as a little secret of mine. Xinyu raised his head and looked at Shang Junlin from head to toe, a secret, just like any other secret that your Majesty has not delved into before. You also knows that he has hidden many things from Zhen. Shang Junlin lowered his head and kissed Xinyu's forehead. He said dotingly, All right, Zhen will not delve into it. Zhen will wait for the day when you are willing to tell Zhen in person. Xinyu had already been marked as his. He had enough time to wait for Xinyu to take the initiative to open his heart. Shang Junlin sat down next to Xinyu and carefully read the contents. Even De Huan doesn't have these things. Is it difficult to make them? It's not difficult. Xinyu gave them to me together with some recipes. It's just that these things are not easy for the imperial court to promote. Xinyu took out another stack of paper. On it was a detailed production process written by Xinyu. You can handle these things. If you lack people or anything else, just tell Jin directly. You have given Jin enough things. Just keep these things in your hands. Shang Junlin hugged Shan Yu's waist. He thought of the things that Shan Yu had taken out before. Compared to those things, the things that Shan Yu gave were more suitable for personal use. That's fine. Shan Yu didn't refuse, after all. What's mine is also your majesty's. Most of the things that Shan Yu gave were things that would be popular with women. For example, lipstick, soap, face coverings. Shan Yu sorted these things out and found something that interested him. Alcohol. A certain amount of alcohol could be used to disinfect. Shan Yu remembered that the book said that in the world before Xian Qingran's time travel, medical skills were very advanced. Shen Qingran himself also said that many diseases that could kill people in this dynasty could be easily cured in his time. Your Majesty, this thing may be used in the army. Xinyu took out the recipe for alcohol. If the alcohol mentioned here can be made, it can reduce many unnecessary casualties on the battlefield. Shang Junlin put down the memorial in his hand and came over with interest. Alcohol? Is it alcohol? Alcohol has this kind of effect? It's a kind of alcohol, but it's not the kind we usually drink. The production method is written here. Your Majesty, take a look. Shang Junlin handed the recipe to Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin looked at the 2 lines and frowned slightly. It was written in detail, but there were some words he had never heard of before. For example, distillation, purification, dilution. Your Majesty, do you want to summon Xinyu and ask her about it? You also doesn't know about this? Your Majesty, do you really think I'm omnipotent? Xinyu's eyebrows curved. I also don't understand these things. Xinyu thought that Shan Yu was also a time traveler like her, so she directly wrote according to the words of her previous life. If she didn't have a part of the original owner's memory, knew how to write Dahuan characters, and was afraid that writing modern simplified characters would cause trouble, she wouldn't use Dahuan characters to write these things. Although the content wasn't much, she still stumbled a few days to finish writing. Thanks to her previous life, she loved to read novels. She could more or less remember some of the necessary skills for time travel. After giving the things to Xinyu was very nervous. She didn't know if these things were useful to Xinyu. If Xinyu felt that they weren't useful, what should she do? Fortunately, she didn't have to wait long before Yuzhong Palace sent someone to summon her. The little eunuch leading the way was still the same one, and his attitude towards her was much warmer. Xinyu's heart calmed down a little. The little eunuch led her to the main hall and quietly retreated. Xinyu composed herself and greeted Xinyu and Shang Junlin. No need to be so polite. If Xinyu was willing, he could give people a very amiable feeling. Today, I called you to ask you about alcohol. Xinyu guessed a little. She heard a lot about the current emperor from Imperial Concubine Dowager and knew that he had fought on the battlefield. She also thought about it before writing in alcohol. Although it was easy to make medical alcohol in modern times, it was because modern times had all kinds of precision instruments. Dahuan didn't have anything. To make alcohol, the corresponding equipment must be made first. Do you have any ideas about purification and dilution? Actually, we can directly use Baiju to purify the alcohol we want, but the premise is that we need to know the alcohol content of the Baiju. I'm not sure what the alcohol content of the alcohol here is, so we can only choose another method. First, we need to get pure alcohol, then we need to dilute it with water. There were many words that didn't belong to Dahuan. Xinyu lowered his eyes. Can you make it? If there is the corresponding equipment, I can. Xinyu knew this because there was a time when she was obsessed with reading novels. She always imagined that one day she could travel through time and learned a lot of things that were easy to learn. For example, making soap, perfume, and so on. When it came to perfume, alcohol was needed. Describe in detail what you need. Jin will have someone make it for you. Shang Junlin said in a deep voice. Xinyu searched through the memories of the original owner and found that Dahuan already had glass, but it was still far from the kind she wanted. Replying to your Majesty, what this servant wants needs to be made with colored glass, but it will be different from the colored glass on the market now. It needs to be transparent. This servant knows how to make transparent colored glass, so I will write it down. Shinyu tried hard to recall the memories in her mind. Oh right, about the alcohol that this servant wants. It must be strictly mixed in proportion to reduce the effect of wound infection. Jin understands. The palace servant brought a pen and paper and led Shinyu to the side hall. Your Majesty, why don't you set up an independent department to research these novel things? We can't let the Ministry of Works do everything. The independent department will be directly under Your Majesty and won't be interfered with by any forces. After all, the Ministry of Works belonged to Dahuan. There were many people there, so it was indeed inconvenient to put some things there to research. Shang Junlin thought for a moment and said, Ayu's words make sense. Shinyu went to the side hall and wrote down all the ideas she could think of. She also drew simple diagrams of the beakers and distillation bottles made of transparent glass. After finishing everything, Shinyu looked at the results of her hard work for half a day. She sighed in her heart. I didn't expect that I would really encounter time travel. The things that I learned because of my unspeakable thoughts and was scolded for being useless could really be used one day. When Shinyu came out with the things, she only saw Shinyu. The young man in blue stood by the window with his back to her. His temperament was exactly the same as the young master of an ancient aristocratic family that Shinyu imagined. Did he really time travel from the modern era like her? Shinyu couldn't help but think. Shinyu turned around and saw the doubts in Shan Yu's eyes. He said, Do you have something to ask me? There were palace servants in the room, and Shan Yu was more cautious than before. She didn't want to talk about time travel directly. She only asked vaguely, Why is His Highness willing to give this opportunity to me? Shinyu knew that she would be suspicious, so he had already thought of an excuse. My health wasn't good in the past, so I rarely went out. My family was strict and didn't let me do many things. If I knew what you said, I would have taken it out long ago. After saying this, Shinyu sighed lightly. Shinyu thought that she had touched his sore spot. She bit her lips and said, I'm sorry. There's nothing to apologize for. Shinyu changed the topic. Do you want to take a look at the newly built cement road? Can I go? Shinyu certainly wanted to. Not to mention other things. Just the fact that she could leave the palace was already very tempting to her. Seeing the hidden expectation in Shun Yu's eyes, Shinyu slightly curved his lips. Of course you can. When I arrange it, I will send someone to call you to Consort Dowager. Then can I walk around the other places in the capital? Shin Yu's mind was full of thoughts about leaving the palace. How could she still remember her doubts about Shin Yu? Besides, the cement road in Dahuan had already been built. She didn't need to doubt this and that. Wasn't Shin Yu willing to help her because they came from the same place? Thinking of this, Shin Yu felt a little ashamed of her doubts. She secretly made up her mind to do something useful as soon as possible to repay Shin Yu's kindness. Yes, I will give you free time. If you are worried that you are not familiar with the capital, I can also let Mushi accompany you to walk around. Yes. Shun Yu's happiness was beyond words. After returning to Consort Dowager's palace, Consort Dowager saw it at a glance. Consort Dowager called her. What made you so happy? Guijun promised to take me out of the palace. I haven't had a good look at the capital yet. Shun Yu's eyes were full of yearning. What would the place that carried her second life look like? Out of the palace, Consort Dowager's eyes were in a trance for a moment. It's good to go out and have a look. Fongrong, give Shin Yu some money. Go out and have fun, but remember not to cause trouble for Guijun. Consort Dowager didn't suspect anything. There were many palace maids in the palace who entered the palace at a young age. They came from all over Dahuan and might not even have seen the entire capital. It was normal for them to yearn for the outside. I will. Shun Yu nodded solemnly. The women's products that Shun Yu gave were not difficult to make. Shun Yu had many shops under his control. After the finished products were made, they could be sold in the shops. Your Majesty, has Miss Fong's official position been decided today? This matter had been delayed for more than 10 days. Today was the deadline. Shang Junlin wanted Fong Jai to enter the Hanlin Academy through the normal procedures, but the aristocratic families refused. Most of the official positions that they proposed were not important. Their meaning was obvious. They just needed to find an unimportant position to support her. It's been decided. Just like in previous years, she will enter the Hanlin Academy with Jiang Huiqing and He Chengyu. Shang Junlin put down the pen in his hand and rubbed his eyebrows. As for the aristocratic families like the Yi family, in view of the fact that this was a mistake made by the younger generation, we will only punish the person who made the mistake. What about Yi Jiaming? Xinyu walked behind Shang Junlin and massaged his temples. He personally experienced how much thought Shang Junlin had put into this matter. Cancel the results this time as a warning to others. This was the result after the aristocratic families had to take a step back. It seems that your majesty has won this time. After so long, the dust has finally settled. Congratulations, your majesty. Although there were still many problems to face in the future, at least the first step was successfully taken. As for Fang Jiayi's future development, it all depended on her. How does you plan to congratulate me? Shang Junlin grabbed Shun Yu's hand and pulled him in front of him. He hugged him on his lap and intimately whispered in his ear. Speaking of which, this suggestion was made by you. Shouldn't there be a reward for fulfilling a Yu's wish? Chapter 88. Xin Yu looked at Shang Junlin speechlessly. He found that Shang Junlin liked to ask for rewards from him more and more. No, it was more accurate to say that he was asking for rewards than being intimate. Shang Junlin didn't really want anything. He just wanted Xun Yu to take the initiative. Xin Yu let go of Shang Junlin's hand on his forehead and slowly moved it away. Your Majesty, what reward do you want? You will take the initiative to kiss me, Shang Junlin said reservedly. Of course, what he really wanted was more than just a kiss. But he also knew that he couldn't tease Xin Yu too much. Otherwise, he wouldn't get anything. Or you will let me kiss you. Your Majesty, you want to do more than that, right? Xin Yu glanced at him. He knew that this would be the result. Of course, if Yu is willing to do more, I will be very happy. Shang Junlin's hand on Xun Yu's waist slid down meaningfully. Xin Yu held down the man's hand that kept moving down. It's clearly your Majesty's business. Why does it seem like you're doing it for me? Doesn't Yu miss you? Shang Junlin pulled the person who was about to move out of his arms back. He put his head on Xun Yu's shoulder and asked in a hoarse voice. I think about Yu all the time. Will you miss me? Your Majesty. Xun Yu's breath was unstable. Let go of me. Yu also likes. The rest of the voice disappeared in the kiss. The candlelight flickered and two intertwined figures were reflected on the ground. Occasionally, a few murmurs could be heard and disappeared in midair. In the end, Shang Junlin was satisfied that he got the reward he wanted. Xin Yu was half lying on the bed and was about to fall asleep. It was already late. Xin Yu had been taking calming pills all this time. It was already past his bedtime, and he was extremely sleepy. Shang Junlin did not bother him anymore. He called for hot water and washed Xin Yu. Then, he carried him to the bed and planted a kiss on his forehead. Sleep? Your Majesty, aren't you going to sleep now? Xin Yu grabbed the sleeve of the person who was about to leave. Jin will come after changing my clothes. You sleep first, Shang Junlin coaxed gently. Xin Yu vaguely realized that Shang Junlin was indeed wearing court attire. He slowly let go of his hand and stared at Shang Junlin while resisting the drowsiness. Shang Junlin's heart softened. He quickly changed his clothes, lifted the quilt, and held Xin Yu in his arms. He patted him on the back and said, Sleep? Yes. His eyelids became heavier and heavier. Xin Yu finally couldn't resist and closed his eyes, falling into a deep sleep. Shang Junlin stared at the peaceful sleeping face of the person in his arms. His eyes were filled with darkness. He thought of what Imperial Physician Gu said to him during the day. Xin Yu's illness seemed to be a deficiency disease, but in fact, there was something else. In other words, Xun Yu's current physical condition was likely caused by someone. Shang Junlin's heart was filled with anger. Deficiency disease was innate and could not be changed. But he never thought that it was caused by someone. The suffering that his Yu had suffered since she was young might have been caused by someone. As long as he thought of this, he couldn't stop the violence in his heart. Xin Yu seemed to feel that Shang Junlin's breath was not right. He moved uneasily in the man's arms. Shang Junlin restrained his breath, pulled the person into his arms, and kissed the forehead of the person in his arms to comfort him. Xinyu found a comfortable position and didn't move. It was a dreamless night. When he woke up, the sky was already bright. There was no familiar breath around him. He thought that the person had gone to court. He rubbed the pillow and slowly sat up. "Young master, are you awake?" Mu Shi, who had been waiting outside, heard the noise and asked.
Yes.
Hearing the answer, Mu Shi came in with clean clothes and helped Xinyu to dress. Xinyu lowered his head and tidied up his sleeves. This was the best sleep he had ever had since he dreamed of Prince Yu. Thinking about the difference from the previous days, it seemed that there was only one thing. Could it be that doing that thing could really help him sleep? Xinyu couldn't help but wonder. After washing up, Mu Shi asked the small kitchen to serve breakfast. It was all Shan Yu's favorite dishes. Perhaps because he had enough sleep, Xinyu ate half a bowl more than usual. After breakfast, Imperial Physician Gu came to check his pulse. Because of the abnormal pulse last time, Imperial Physician Gu came almost every day recently. "Your pulse has returned to normal. Your Highness is fine." Imperial Physician Gu remembered Shang Junlin's instructions. He didn't reveal anything about Shan Yu's condition. Xinyu thought of today's abnormality and decided to ask a professional. "Imperial Physician Gu, compared to a few days ago, I slept exceptionally well last night. I want to ask, is it because of the sedative medicine or something else?" Logically speaking, the prescription I prescribed should take effect on the day you take the medicine. Did your Highness do anything last night or before that? Is there something different? Imperial Physician Gu was very confident about the medicine he prescribed. "There's nothing different. The only difference is that I fooled around with His Majesty." Imperial Physician Gu, do you think there is any connection between the two? When Shen Yu's voice fell, Mu Shi blushed. She knew that His Majesty asked for hot water last night. When His Majesty left this morning, he specifically told them not to disturb His Highness's rest. After being in the palace for several months, Mu Shi was now very clear about what this meant. Imperial Physician Gu was stunned for a moment, and then he realized what Shen Yu meant by fooling around. After a moment of contemplation, he said, "It may be partly because after the energy is released, people will be more tired and more likely to fall into a deep sleep. So there is such a saying." Shen Yu blinked. It seemed that Shang Junlin made fun of him last night by a fluke. Imperial Physician Gu adjusted the original prescription according to Shen Yu's pulse before leaving. After walking out of Yuzhong Palace for a while, Eunuch Ming, who had been waiting here for a long time, greeted him. "His Majesty has been waiting for a long time. Imperial Physician Gu, please follow me." Imperial Physician Gu was used to being called away by the Emperor when he left Yuzhong Palace. He tidied up his clothes and followed Eunuch Ming to see Shang Junlin. "How is His Highness's condition?" Seeing Imperial Physician Gu, Shang Junlin raised his head from a pile of waiting memorials. "Replying to Your Majesty, His Highness's condition is very good, and his pulse has returned to normal. You said last time that His Highness's pulse is strange. Have you found out the reason?" Shang Junlin was very concerned about the conjecture that Imperial Physician Gu once raised about Shan Yu's condition. "Imperial Physician Gu, the change is too subtle. If I am not very familiar with His Highness's pulse, I may not be able to detect the change. This time, I noticed that His Highness's pulse has returned to normal little by little. Forgive me for not being good enough. I can't determine the reason for this change for the time being." Shang Junlin, what you said last time was not a natural deficiency. Imperial Physician Gu, it's just my conjecture. If it's really not a natural deficiency, then it's easy to explain. There are very few cases of natural deficiency that can be cured. If there is a hidden reason, I will have more confidence to cure His Highness if I find the cause. Shang Junlin, I'll have to trouble Imperial Physician Gu with this matter. This is my duty. Your Majesty doesn't need to thank me. Imperial Physician Gu remembered what Shen Yu said just now and hesitated. Today, His Highness asked some questions, but I haven't gotten the answer yet. Please pay more attention. After which, he recounted the conversation he had with Shen Yu in Yuzhong Palace. Shang Junlin, I've been worried that this matter will hurt a Yu's body, so I didn't dare to do too much. Does Imperial Physician Gu mean that it's appropriate? Imperial Physician Gu, His Highness's body is recuperating well. As long as it's not too much, there won't be any problems. Shang Junlin, the ointment that Imperial Physician Gu gave to you last time is good. You can make more. Imperial Physician Gu. This subject accepts the decree. Shang Junlin was in a good mood when he heard that Shen Yu was fine. He rewarded Imperial Physician Gu with a bunch of things and asked Eunuch Ming to send him back. Imperial Physician Gu was sent back to the Gu residence by a carriage from the palace. There was a row of gifts behind the carriage, and the people on the street all stopped to watch. Hearing the commotion outside, Gu Huai walked out and saw Imperial Physician Gu coming down from the palace's specially made carriage. There were several carriages behind the carriage. It's a gift from His Majesty. Imperial Physician Gu got down from the carriage and replied to Gu Huai. He turned to Eunuch Ming and said, "I'll have to trouble Eunuch Ming. It's nothing. It's nothing. Imperial Physician Gu deserves it." After the people from the palace left, Gu Huai helped to organize the gifts and said, "Brother, you're so awesome. You received so many gifts. It's all because His Majesty and His Highness are good people. Some of these gifts were given by Shang Junlin, and some were given by Yuzhong Palace. Knowing Imperial Physician Gu's preferences, most of these gifts could be used by him. Is Guijuan's health better? It's no big deal." Imperial Physician Gu rubbed the young man's head. "Don't worry, I'll be fine." After organizing the gifts, Imperial Physician Gu took out the ingredients for making ointment. He planned to make more. His Majesty only had Guijun in his harem, so there would be a lot of demand. Speaking of ointment, he learned how to make a living when he first entered the Imperial Academy of Medicine. At that time, Gu Huai was seriously ill and needed all kinds of expensive herbs. In order to cure him, he took a lot of work outside. The boss of the medicine shop that he often went to helped him a lot. When he found out that he was short of money, he told him that he could make money quickly by making ointment. The truth was, the ointment with aphrodisiac effects was very popular. Later, when he was not so short of money, he did not make ointment anymore. The main reason was that he was shy and did not want his children to know that he was making ointment. At that time, he sold the ointment through someone else. The boss of the medicine shop helped him sell the ointment and did not show up the whole time. He made ointment for Shen Yu because Shen Yu's physical condition was special. Since he took over, he had to do his best. His Majesty's needs were high. It was not easy for a man to provide pleasure, and Guijuan's health was not good. If he was often injured because of this, it would have a great impact on his health. Today, His Majesty mentioned it again. Imperial Physician Gu thought of the amount that was sent to Yuzhong Palace last time. It was not a lot, but it was definitely not a small amount. Should he remind His Majesty to let His Majesty rest more? Imperial Physician Gu sighed. He was just a doctor. Why did he have to worry about His Majesty's bedroom matters? He put the boiled ointment into a box to cool down. Imperial Physician Gu took the prepared flower juice and added it. He was so focused on making the ointment that he did not notice that Gu Huai had entered the room. Gu Huai was very interested in everything about Imperial Physician Gu. When he saw the row of transparent ointment, he picked up one of them and walked behind Imperial Physician Gu. "Brother, what is this?" Imperial Physician Gu was startled by the sudden voice and loosened his grip. Fortunately, Gu Huai had sharp eyes and quick hands and did not let the ointment fall. "Why did you come in?" Imperial Physician Gu composed himself and turned around to see Gu Huai holding the ointment that he had made halfway. His eyes were full of curiosity. Imperial Physician Gu's face turned red. Chapter 89. How was he going to explain to Gu Huai what the ointment was used for? Imperial Physician Gu took the box from Gu Huai's hands with a red face and put it aside. As if realizing his mistake, Gu Huai lowered his head and said in a low voice, "I'm sorry, brother. I didn't know I couldn't touch it." Imperial Physician Gu was amenable to persuasion but not coercion. Seeing Gu Huai lower his head and admit his mistake, he couldn't blame him. He couldn't help but rub the youth's head. "It's fine. It's just that this ointment is for Guijun. Children shouldn't touch things used by adults." "I'm not a child anymore, brother." Gu Huai sighed in his heart. He was about to turn 18, but Imperial Physician Gu still treated him like a child. It was true that he enjoyed being doted on by Imperial Physician Gu, but he didn't want to be treated like a child forever. He had already grown up and was no longer the child who could only be trampled on. He could also shelter his brother from the wind and rain and hold up the sky. I know you've already grown up. All right, go out and play. I'm almost done here. Seeing his firm attitude, Gu Huai didn't want to make Imperial Physician Gu angry and obediently left. However, he was still curious about what Imperial Physician Gu had made and why his face had turned red when he asked. After Gu Huai left, he called for his subordinate and described the ointment he saw in detail. He asked, "Do you know what this is?" The subordinate paused and hesitated. It seems to be used by men to lubricate themselves when they're having fun. After saying that, the subordinate quickly added, "Of course, this is only my wild guess. It might not be the real thing." Gu Huai was silent. When he thought of Imperial Physician Gu's face turning red when he asked about it, how could he not be sure? It was most likely what his subordinate said. When did his brother learn how to make this kind of thing? Based on his brother's proficiency, it clearly wasn't his first time. Gu Huai carefully recalled their interactions over the years and tried to find clues from his memories. Imperial Physician Gu still didn't know that his secret was about to be exposed. He calmed down and finished the last step. He took out a small jade bottle and filled it with the ointment. Looking at the ointment, Imperial Physician Gu let out a long sigh of relief. The portion she made this time should be enough to last her for a while. Next time, she should find another place to make it. It would be too embarrassing if Gu Huai saw her making it at home. The finished ointment was quickly delivered to Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin put it away and placed it in the drawer beside the bed. "What is your Majesty doing?" Xin Yu had just finished watering the flowers and plants outside. When he walked in, he saw Shang Junlin bending over the bed and doing something. Shang Junlin stood up straight, turned around and walked towards Xin Yu. Didn't Imperial Physician Gu almost run out of the cosmetics he sent last time? He sent some more. Did His Majesty squeeze him to do it? Xin Yu saw through him. He is a good Imperial physician. Why does His Majesty keep making him do this kind of thing? This is also for Yu's health. Shang Junlin had his own reasons. Imperial Physician Gu is helping Yu to nurse her body. Naturally, he has to take care of all aspects. If His Majesty didn't force me to do it, he wouldn't need these things, Xin Yu said angrily. Ever since the last time, Shang Junlin always liked to force him to do it. Although he didn't finish it, he was able to satisfy Shang Junlin's craving. All the court officials could feel that the emperor was in a good mood recently. The aristocratic officials thought that Shang Junlin was in a good mood because he beat them in the matter of women becoming officials. They were unhappy, but they couldn't show it. This made them very upset for a while. Other than them, the other officials all hoped that Shang Junlin's good mood could last for a while longer. He Chengyu, Jiang Huiqing, and Fang Jiai had all entered the Hanlin Academy. Even if the others were unhappy, they couldn't say anything now that the matter had been settled. Fang Jiai's essay was circulated among the students. Other than a few people who had a strong prejudice against women, the rest of the students didn't have any doubts about Fang Jiai taking second place in the imperial examinations. Seeing that there was no movement outside, the aristocratic officials were furious. Of course, they wouldn't let the matter rest. They bribed a few students to talk about the disadvantages of women becoming officials. They were attacked by the other students and could only leave the matter unsettled. Luckily, Yu predicted this in advance. Otherwise, there would be trouble. Shang Junlin was holding the secret letter that the hidden dragon guards had just presented to him. He was in a good mood and the corners of his lips curled up. What happened? Xin Yu brewed tea for the two of them and pushed one of the cups in front of Shang Junlin. The aristocratic families really sent people to stir up trouble among the students. We prepared in advance and didn't cause any trouble. Take a look. Shang Junlin handed the secret letter to Xin Yu. Xin Yu opened it and read 10 lines at a glance. They underestimated the power of the poor too much. They also didn't understand what the most important thing in the hearts of these scholars who haven't stepped into the officialdom. They haven't been tainted by the fame and fortune of the officialdom, so their hearts have their own gullies. They also have a lot of ambition. Xin Yu had dealt with these people a lot in his previous life. In the eyes of the officialdom, they might be simple and easy to use. However, if you thought that they were stupid and could be manipulated, you would be wrong. When it comes to the matters of the imperial court, it's easy to distort the truth by word of mouth. I have to think of a way to let every place in Dahuan know the exact situation of the imperial court. Xinyu lowered his eyes and pondered. In his previous life, Shang Junlin's reputation had become like that. On one hand, it was because of King Yu and the others. On the other hand, it was because there was a huge gap in information between the imperial court and the local government. There was no way to spread the news of what Shang Junlin had done to the local government. The news that they received was what others wanted them to hear. Is it you talking about the imperial court bulletin? Yes, but not all of it. It needs to be more detailed. Not only will the local government know about the various decisions and measures made by the imperial court, but the imperial court will also know about the local government situation. In his previous life, Xinyu had an information network that covered almost all of Dahuan. However, it was different from the one he proposed today. This idea was inspired by Xinyu. If they could exchange information and reduce the time difference, it would be more beneficial for the imperial court to control the local government. What does you think? Shang Junlin thought deeply for a while and felt that this method was indeed beneficial. Your Majesty can discuss with the ministers, but you can't squeeze me for everything. Xinyu rested his chin on his hands and looked at Shang Junlin with a smile. Shang Junlin was helpless. Fine, I will discuss with the Prime Minister and the others first. After the discussion comes to a conclusion, you can see if there is anything that can be changed. The Prime Minister and the others are much better than me. Xinyu only cared about the idea and didn't want to worry about how to implement it. The ministers in the imperial court knew enough about Dahuan. With Shang Junlin's supervision, the final method wouldn't be wrong. Shang Junlin saw that he didn't want to participate too much and didn't force him. He was willing to satisfy you, no matter what kind of life he wanted to live. Your Majesty, many flowers have bloomed in the imperial garden. Let's go and enjoy the flowers. The thing Xinyu did the most every day when he saw Shang Junlin was reviewing reports. It was rare for the weather to be good recently. In a few days, it would be hot. He wanted to take advantage of the weather to walk outside more. Imperial Physician Gu also said that you should walk more. Shang Junlin didn't have any objections. He put away the things and took Xinyu out. The evening sun shone on people's bodies, making them feel warm and fuzzy. Xinyu narrowed his eyes in satisfaction. All kinds of flowers bloomed in the imperial garden. Colorful flowers dotted the sea of green, competing with each other in terms of beauty. It was too beautiful to behold. The fragrance of the flowers was carried by the breeze. Xinyu pulled Shang Junlin's sleeve. Your Majesty, how many kinds of flowers are there? Almost all the flowers in Dahuan that can survive in the capital are here. See if there is anything you like. I will ask Ming Chong to bring some to you. Shang Junlin was not interested in flowers and plants. The flowers and plants in the palace had always been taken care of by the palace servants. Xinyu walked and stopped. Occasionally, when he saw something he liked, he would stop for a while. The more fragrant the flowers were, the more it attracted a few butterflies. Don't you know that the flowers here can't be picked? You have already picked a basket of flowers. Who asked you to come here? Shang Junlin frowned when he heard a noise in front of him. Eunuch Ming quickly walked over. This servant will go and take a look. After a while, Eunuch Ming came back. Xinyu came to pick flowers. She was seen by the steward auntie who passed by and was reprimanded. Xinyu, who was about to leave, stopped. Xinyu? Why did she come to the imperial garden? As he spoke, he walked in the direction of the sound. What happened? The man's majestic voice sounded. The palace servants all knelt down. The slightly older palace servant saluted and said, replying to your Majesty, this palace maid may not know the rules here and picked some flowers. This servant has already reprimanded her. She didn't know that Xinyu knew them. She was afraid that she would lose her life because of a small matter, so she subconsciously protected her. Xinyu looked at the palace maid who had just reprimanded her in surprise. She hurriedly bowed her head and admitted her mistake. You can leave first. You stay. Xinyu pointed to Xinyu. The palace maid looked at Xinyu before leaving. She wanted to say something, but was pulled away by Eunuch Ming. Get up. Why did you pick these flowers? Xinyu asked. This servant wanted to make flower cakes for the old imperial concubine. I looked for the best place with flowers and found this place. I didn't notice that the flowers here can't be picked. This servant knows her mistake. I'll forgive you for your first offense. Forget it. Shinyu looked at the basket of flowers beside her and curiously asked, You used flowers to make food directly? Not only flowers. If you are interested in pies made with flowers, this servant will send some to Yuzhong Palace after this servant makes them. Shinyu lowered her head. In fact, she was also in the experimental stage. She wasn't sure if the pies she made would be delicious. Shinyu was in a good mood when she walked around the Imperial Garden on a whim and got a new snack. After walking around, she returned to Yuzhong Palace. The small kitchen had already prepared the meal. Chapter 90. The atmosphere instantly became ambiguous. Shunyu was on top of Shang Junlin. He looked down at the man lying under him, and an inexplicable emotion flashed through his eyes. Shunyu pressed her hand on the man's chest. She could feel his steady and powerful heartbeat through her palm. She moved her fingers. You? Do you want to touch it? Shang Junlin coaxed in a low voice. Without waiting for Shan Yu's answer, he took his hand and explored it bit by bit. Shinyu pursed his lips, and his fingers curled up slightly. Shinyu couldn't help but stare at Shang Junlin. Your Majesty's words are like gold. We agreed that we wouldn't do anything today. Shang Junlin didn't intend to do anything, but with a beauty in his arms, he couldn't help but be tempted. When he saw Shinyu's complaining eyes, he had to give up. Okay, I won't disturb you today. If you're tired, you can rest. Shinyu looked at him suspiciously. The meaning in his eyes was obvious. It was as if he was asking, Why are you so easy to talk to today? Shang Junlin covered his eyes. Don't look at me like that. I'm afraid that I won't be able to control myself. When a man's interest was aroused and he had a sweetheart in his arms, it was difficult to control himself. Since Shang Junlin said that, it seemed that he really didn't intend to do anything. Shinyu relaxed and fell on the man's body, closing his eyes. He was indeed sleepy. If your Majesty likes it, you can touch it. Before going to sleep, Shinyu whispered. As soon as his voice fell, Shinyu felt his waist tighten. The man whispered in his ear, Are you deliberately not letting me sleep? Shinyu rubbed the man's chest and didn't say anything. Shang Junlin waited for a long time, but only heard the sound of the young man's steady breathing. He looked at the bed curtain above his head and smiled bitterly. He wanted to get up to relieve himself, but Shunyu was clinging onto him and frowned every time he moved. Shang Junlin had no choice but to wait until Shunyu was fast asleep before he slowly got off the bed. Shang Junlin came back with a chill. He was afraid that the chill would spread to Shinyu, so he didn't immediately lie down on the bed. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed and traced the young man's facial features with his fingers. I really don't know if you did it on purpose or not. Even if he did it on purpose, he couldn't do anything to Shinyu. Shinyu had a good night's sleep. When she woke up the next day, she found herself firmly held in someone's arms. The familiar cold scent of the man lingered at the tip of her nose, and her Shinyu moved. You is awake? The man's deep voice came from the top of her head. Shinyu softly said, Oh. Shinyu, who had just woken up, was still a little confused and slow to react to everything. She didn't even feel the man's hand reaching into her clothes. Shang Junlin carelessly stroked Yu's warm skin under his palm. It was rare to see such an obedient and soft side of Shinyu. He deeply felt that he had missed a lot because of the morning court. Shinyu half opened her eyes for a while, and her thoughts came back little by little. Why didn't His Majesty go to the morning court today? I wanted to stay with you today. Shinyu propped herself up and looked at the sky outside. There was no sunlight and it was very dark, so the entire bedchamber was dusky. Is it raining outside? It rained for a while, but it has stopped now. Shang Junlin pressed her back into his arms and wrapped her in the quilt. It's a little cold today. Don't catch a cold. Shang Junlin actually went to the morning court, but when he saw that the weather was not right, he was worried about Shinyu, who was alone in Yuzhong Palace, so he hurriedly finished the morning court and came back to accompany him. He still had lingering fears about Shinyu's nightmare last time. He thought that if Shinyu had a nightmare this time, at least he would be by his side. Shinyu was in a daze for a while. When she was completely awake, she got out of bed. Shang Junlin didn't leave Yuzhong Palace for the whole day. During the time, there were ministers who asked to see him, but he refused. Xinyu handed the prescription given by Shunyu to his subordinates. Not long after, they made the finished product and sent the news through Mu Shi. So fast? Shunyu was surprised. This servant was also surprised. They even sent the finished product. Mu Shi held a small box and opened it for Shunyu to see. The things in the box were smaller than those made by Xinyu, but they were made in various shapes. They looked more delicate and pleasant. At first glance, it was obvious that the women would like them. Like this, Xinyu picked up one of them. How many can you make in a day? A skilled worker can make about 20 to 30. Xinyu played with the small wooden box in his hand. There were enough people in the manor for the time being, so they could put it in the shop to test the water first. Let them make a batch first. They don't need too many. Put them in the shop in the north of the city to sell. Only a certain amount will be sold every day. It's first come, first served. Let me think about the rest.
Yes.
The things made in the manor were first sent to Xinyu. Xinyu picked some that could be used. The rest that were suitable for women were given to the palace maids in Yuzhong Palace. Some were sent to the palace of concubine dowager. Did you go to the jewelry shop in the north of the city? They recently launched some new products. Not only do they look pleasant, but they also work well. Are you talking about soap in various shapes? I asked my brother to buy one for me. It's really good to use it to wash my hands. It smells good after washing. There's also their new lipstick. Look, I used it today. Doesn't it look better than the previous one? Wow, it's true. This color suits you very well. I think so too. Their lipstick has many colors. I have decided to buy it there in the future. Considering some problems, Xinyu only let the shop sell lipstick and soap to the outside for the time being. These two things were relatively simple to make. Young master, Mu Shi came in with the account book. Many customers want to sell more. The shopkeeper wrote a letter to ask if we should increase the daily sales. Ask them if they can do it. If they can, we can increase it appropriately. Xinyu opened the account book and looked at it. To be honest, the results were far beyond his expectations. In just a few days, the profit of the soap and lipstick was more than the sum of the other products. The business of this shop had not been very good. With the two new products, soap and lipstick, it became the most popular jewelry shop among women. I didn't expect it to sell so well at such a price. Xinyu sighed. Considering the uniqueness of the products and the difficulty of making them, Xinyu set the price for these two products not cheap. Originally, he limited the daily sales because he was afraid that they would not be able to sell out. Unexpectedly, the opposite happened. Not to mention the young ladies outside. There are also many people in the palace who want to buy some back. Young master, don't underestimate the purchasing power of women. Mu Shi said with a smile. I was wrong. You can let them do as they see fit. Xinyu had people who were responsible for taking care of the shop. He did not need to worry about these things. Before the arrival of summer, the Ministry of Works had developed more uses for the cement and put them into practice one by one. Xinyu knew that it would take some time to really use this material on a large scale. With so many people in the Ministry of Works watching, he and Shang Junlin only needed to wait for the final results. Your Majesty, the weather is getting hotter and hotter. Even Shunyu, who was afraid of the cold, put on a thin shirt. When the weather is really hot, Jin will take you to the summer palace to stay for a while. Shang Junlin brushed away the hair on Shan Yu's face. The capital of Dahuan had 4 distinct seasons. It was cold in winter and hot in summer. During the hottest period of every year, the emperor would take his concubines and officials to the summer palace to avoid the heat. After Shang Junlin ascended the throne, he had been on the battlefield for a long time. Later, he returned to the capital and did not have much interest in the summer palace. Therefore, until now, he had not been there even once. After receiving Shang Junlin's order, both sides got busy early. It was not a small project for the emperor to go to the summer palace to avoid the heat. They had to prepare a long time in advance. After some inquiries, eldest young master he finally heard news about his younger brother. The moment he heard the news, he was so angry that he trembled. If it were not for the servant who stopped him, he was afraid that he would have directly rushed to Master He and asked for his innocence. He always thought that his younger brother was just staying in a place that they did not know about. He never thought that that place would be a secret prison that did not see the light of day. Oh, how ridiculous. His father obviously knew this result long ago. Why didn't he tell them? He even said that his younger brother would come back directly after he finished what he was told to do. He probably did not intend to save his younger brother from the beginning. Young master, calm down. It's just a guess. It doesn't mean that young master is in that place. You can't panic. If something happens to you, who will care about young master? Eldest young master, he reluctantly pulled back a bit of rationality. You're right. Continue to investigate. I want accurate information. If my younger brother is really in that place and father does not intend to do anything, then don't blame me for saving him myself. He did not want to care about the so-called overall situation. Those who gave the orders did not even show their faces. He did not know why his father was so obedient to them. The news has already been leaked. Shang Junlin turned around. It seems like the He family is planning to make a move as well. I just don't know how the He family will react when they find out that their son has already caused a huge disaster. The He family had been dormant for a long time. Since they were not willing to take the initiative to take action, Shang Junlin did not mind adding fuel to the fire. What about King Yu? Are those people really not going to care about his life or death? King Yu was almost confirmed to be the mastermind behind the fraud, but those people did not take any action. It should not be. It doesn't matter. If they don't show up, King Yu will continue to stay in the dark prison. They will be more anxious than us. They knew that there was a trap ahead. Should they jump in? No, it should be said that they had no choice but to jump in. Eldest young master, he did not let them wait for long. He directly gave them a surprise. Your Majesty, do you mean that eldest young master he directly took the secret order of Master He and the other side to the dark prison? Xin Yu raised his eyebrows in surprise. That's right. How did he order those people to take action? Is the He family dormant in the capital waiting for these people to take action? It should be. Otherwise, what can those people from the He family do? It was not that Shang Junlin looked down on them. It was just that most of the people from the He family were servants and guards. In order to cover up, they did not bring many people. The He family and the forces behind them probably did not expect that all their plans would be ruined by eldest young master He's desire to save his younger brother. Shang Junlin smiled but did not say anything. Eldest young master, he would never know that the information that he thought he had painstakingly gathered was actually leaked to him on purpose. But I also did not expect that he could really bring all those people out. While they were talking, the leader of the Imperial Guards reported, Your Majesty, all the people have been arrested. Shang Junlin held Xin Yu's hand. You? Do you want to go with me to take a look? Xin Yu shook his hand that was held by Shang Junlin. Your Majesty, it seems that you did not give me a chance to choose. Chapter 91. The two left the palace and went to the secret prison. A section of the road leading to the prison was paved with cement. When the carriage traveled on it, it was much smoother than other places. Xin Yu lifted the curtain and looked outside. When Dahuan is paved with such roads, it will be much more convenient to go back and forth. When there is a chance in the future, I will take you around Dahuan. Okay, Your Majesty, you can't go back on your words. The secret prison was brightly lit and was surrounded by layers of Imperial guards. Xin Yu followed Shang Junlin out of the carriage and sighed. This is probably the most lively time in the secret prison, wasn't it? In addition to the Imperial guards, there were so many people who broke out of the prison. Xin Yu seriously doubted that the secret prison could hold all these people. On the other side, knowing that the secret order and the people were taken away by young Master He was furious. Are you all idiots? You let him take them away? Didn't I say that except for me, no one else can touch these things? Master, you really can't blame us. The servant wanted to cry but had no tears. Young Master, he took your letter and said that you ordered him to come. You also told us before that you would do something tonight and asked us to be alert. We thought it was really you who sent young Master He. It could only be said that young Master He was too good at picking the time. After all, he was his eldest son. Master He wouldn't deliberately hide things from him. Except for some things that he really couldn't let him know, he would more or less reveal a bit of other things to young Master He. This time, it was the same. Family head, he didn't have much vigilance against eldest young Master He, so he was easily tricked. Where is the letter? Show me. The servant took out a letter with trembling hands. Family head, he took the letter and read it. He was so angry that he wanted to laugh. The handwriting and tone of the letter were almost the same as what he wrote. No wonder the servants didn't suspect anything. Besides, eldest young Master He made use of the time difference to take the girl away without anyone being suspicious. Master, what should we do now? That unfilial son most likely knows where his younger brother is and brought people to save him. See if you can bring him back. If you can, then there's still a chance of survival. If not, the servant didn't dare to delay and immediately left. However, before he could get far, he saw a group of Imperial Army soldiers surrounding him. In front of the well-trained Imperial Army, the He family had no power to resist. Patriarch He gritted his teeth and retreated to the secret passage with a few of his trusted subordinates. He had raised such a good son for nothing. In the end, Patriarch He and his eldest son, whom he missed dearly, met in the dark prison. By the time Xin Yu and Shang Junlin arrived, all of them had been caught. Xin Yu and Shang Junlin walked into the dark prison. The dark prison was filled with torches, so it was as bright as day. Xin Yu looked at the dark prison under such light for the first time. Patriarch He and eldest young Master He were locked up next to youngest young Master He. Prince Yu was locked up in another place. The rest of the prison breakers were either executed on the spot or locked up together. Prince Yu had heard the movements in the dark prison. He thought that these people were here to save him. However, he didn't expect that these people didn't stop at the place where he was locked up. They went directly to another place and were caught by the Imperial Army soldiers who had been lying in ambush for a long time. Prince Yu was stupefied from the beginning to the end. He had been in contact with the outside world these days. Those people also said that they would save him today. He waited and waited with full expectation. Finally, those people came. However, those people didn't even look at him. There were special officials in charge of the interrogation. Shang Junlin brought Xin Yu here just to see the situation. The leader of the Imperial Army followed beside the two of them and explained what happened that night. According to your Majesty's order, I sent people to observe the eldest son of the He family in secret while guarding all the entrances of the secret prison. As expected, a group of unknown people met with the eldest son of the He family and headed straight for the secret prison. The rest of the matter was clear at a glance. Eldest young Master He, who was eager to save his younger brother, didn't know that he had fallen into the hunter's trap from the beginning. He brought people in and was caught red-handed. He directly accompanied youngest young Master He. After sending away the leader of the Imperial Army, Shang Junlin took Xin Yu to the place where Prince Yu was locked up. You have expected this, right? You allowed me to send messages to the outside world. You have been waiting for this moment for a long time, haven't you? Prince Yu calmed down and thought of many details. When he was first locked up in the dark prison, he couldn't get in touch with the outside world. Why did he suddenly get in touch with the outside world one day? In addition, there were many things that were wrong. At that time, he was in a hurry to get out. Even if he noticed it, he didn't take it seriously. Now that he thought about it, there were too many flaws. Prince Yu is smart this time. Unfortunately, even if they want to save you, they don't dare to show up in person. They only dare to send some people from afar and hand you over to the unreliable He family. Shang Junlin sneered. Prince Yu was full of hatred, but now he was completely defeated. He could only watch as Shang Junlin stood in front of him with the posture of a winner. Shang Junlin was a high and mighty emperor who looked down on everything, but he was a prisoner who was crushed into the mud. His future was unknown. Xin Yu was also looking at Prince Yu. The difference between the current Prince Yu and the man in his previous life was too big. It was so big that he began to doubt whether they were really the same person. It turned out that without the so-called protagonist's halo and the praise that was deliberately applied to him, He was just such an ordinary person. Shang Junlin handed over the prison break to official Fong, who had hurried over and returned to the palace with Shen Yu. Along the way, Shen Yu didn't speak. When they arrived at Yuzhong Palace, Shang Junlin directly carried him out of the carriage. Yu is still thinking about Prince Yu's matter? Shen Yu shook his head and nodded. He was thinking more about his previous life. He thought that what he saw with his own eyes in his previous life and the book he read after his death was the whole truth. At this moment, he suddenly realized that both of them were confusing. Sure enough, he couldn't rely too much on the so-called world's plot. Shang Junlin didn't put him down. He directly carried him and walked inside. Everywhere he passed, the palace servants lowered their heads. Shen Yu fluttered. "Your Majesty, quickly put me down." "I won't." Shang Junlin flatly refused. "So many people are watching. Isn't it right and proper for me to carry my noble husband? Not only can I carry you, I can also kiss you. I can." Enough. Shen Yu didn't want him to continue, so he interrupted. "If your Majesty wants to carry me, then carry me. As long as your Majesty doesn't dislike me for being heavy." "How can I dislike you for being heavy? You should be fatter. It's more comfortable to carry." Shang Junlin weighed the young man in his arms. To him, Shen Yu's weight was really nothing. From a minor illness to a major one, Shen Yu's weight was still much lighter than a normal person's, even though he had recovered a little during this time. The He family was taken down in one fell swoop. Following the clues of the He family, they finally found traces of the mysterious power behind them. Although they couldn't find the real mastermind, it was much better than before. Shang Junlin arranged for the officials who were transferred back from other places one by one. The new officials who entered the imperial examination also gradually entered the imperial court. Everything seemed to be thriving. The Grand Commandant who planned the fraud in the imperial examination was removed from his position, and the position of Grand Commandant was vacant. The aristocratic families and the officials from poor families fought to the death in the imperial court for this position. Especially the aristocratic families, they had already lost too much. If the person who took the position of Grand Commandant wasn't from their faction, it would be a huge blow to them. As Shang Junlin promoted a group of new officials, the aristocratic family's monopoly of the imperial court was finally broken. Because of the aristocratic family's interference, the position of Grand Commandant was never decided. These disputes temporarily didn't affect the peace of Hanlin Academy. "The two of you came together again?" Zhang Huiqing smiled and greeted the person who spoke, replying, "I rode on Brother Cheng Yu's carriage. You know, I'm a little embarrassed recently." The reason was that Zhang Huiqing took a fancy to a set of unique copies. He really wanted it and was worried that it would be bought by someone else if he was late, so he could only reluctantly buy it. I know. When you finish copying, don't forget to lend it to us." "I won't forget." Zhang Huiqing was on duty with He Chengyu. At first, Zhang Huiqing had some misgivings and didn't want to get too close to him. Later, when he saw that his colleagues were easy to get along with, he acted much more casually. He still lived with He Chengyu, and the two of them went in and out together. The people in Hanlin Academy knew that they had a good relationship and often joked about it. Zhang Huiqing went from being embarrassed at the beginning to being able to face it calmly, and only 10 days had passed. "That's right. I seem to have found one of the files you asked me to find last time. Do you want to take a look?" "Thank you." Zhang Huiqing's eyes lit up. "It's been a few decades. Why are you looking for these?" The person was curious. "I admire the great scholars of the past and want to know more about them," Zhang Huiqing explained with a smile. "That's right. You are indeed interested in these. I will help you pay more attention to other things." He didn't suspect anything. After all, Zhang Huiqing's hobby had been deeply rooted in the people of Hanlin Academy. It was normal for a person who could spend all his money to buy a unique book to be interested in the deeds of the great scholars of the past. Fortunately, he had a good relationship with Scholar He, so he could be helped from time to time. Shen Yu occasionally received letters from Zhang Huiqing, and they were all about daily interesting things. Shen Yu also wrote a few letters in reply. For some reason, Shen Yu found that Shang Junlin didn't seem to like to talk about Prince Yu in front of him recently. Even if he asked, the topic would be changed after 2 or 3 sentences. Why does your majesty suddenly not want to talk to me about Prince Yu? After the topic was changed again, Shen Yu asked. He wanted to know if Shang Junlin simply didn't want him to know about Prince Yu, or did he not want him to know about other things as well? Shang Junlin stroked Shan Yu's neck and said in a hoarse voice, I brought you to the dark prison that day for selfish reasons. Huh. Shun Yu was stunned. I know that when you were outside the palace, Prince Yu approached you. I wanted you to see Prince Yu. Your Majesty, Shen Yu interrupted Shang Junlin. Does your Majesty care about these things? Shang Junlin looked at him with deep eyes. The more you loved someone, the more you couldn't tolerate that person having any shadow of someone else. You could say that he was overbearing or paranoid, but he didn't want anyone else to occupy Shen Yu's eyes and mind. He brought Shen Yu to see Prince Yu because he wanted him to deeply understand that Prince Yu was not worthy of his love. After a long while, Shang Junlin held Shan Yu's hand. I thought that I could ignore Yu's matters outside the palace, but I was wrong. I can't ignore it. Everything that happened to Yu, I can't ignore it. Was what Yu said to Prince Yu true? Did Yu really just treat Prince Yu as my substitute? Chapter 92. Shen Yu was silent for a moment. Your Majesty, why are you so clear about what I said before I entered the palace? He asked while knowing the answer. With the hidden dragon guards, everything in the capital could not be hidden from Shang Junlin. Since he was chosen to enter the palace, it was normal for him to be investigated. I know that Prince Yu once approached you with his identity hidden. Later on, you two had a conflict. Shang Junlin pinched Shan Yu's chin and turned his head to face him. Yu, answer my question. Shang Junlin's eyes were dark as he stared at Shen Yu without blinking. A biting cold aura swept over. Shen Yu narrowed his eyes uncomfortably. Your Majesty, don't you know what I think? Why do you care about Prince Yu? What is he? How can he be compared to your Majesty? As for the matter between me and Prince Yu, your Majesty must know my character very well. How can I be sincere to someone who approached me with an impure purpose from the beginning? Shen Yu knew that since Shang Junlin asked, he would not be able to mediate this matter. No matter what kind of feelings he had for Shang Junlin, he did not want Prince Yu to be a thorn between them. He and Prince Yu had broken off completely in his previous life. In this life, there would be no involvement. I know that Prince Yu is not a good person. Shang Junlin gently stroked Shan Yu's chin. Yu, I am not suspecting you. I know. Shen Yu covered Shang Junlin's mouth. Your Majesty, you don't need to say this. I should have explained to you about Prince Yu. I said those words just to annoy him. Now it seems that maybe it was a prophecy. The only difference is that I have no interest in finding a substitute. If I love someone, I will do whatever it takes to get them. Even if I can't get them, I will not do something as immoral as finding a substitute. What's more, how can Prince Yu be worthy? In Shen Yu's eyes, Shen Yu was arrogant and unscrupulous. Shang Junlin knew that what Shen Yu said was exactly what he thought. Shang Junlin loosened his grip on Shan Yu's chin and suddenly pulled her into his arms. Jin understands, Yu. Shen Yu patted Shang Junlin's back to comfort him. Your Majesty, you don't have to think too much. There is no fate between King Yu and me, and there will be no follow-up. Shang Junlin rested his head on Shan Yu's shoulder. Who is Yu's fate? Of course it's your Majesty. With your Majesty here, no one else would have a chance. Does your Majesty lack confidence in yourself? After receiving Shan Yu's accurate answer, the haze in Shang Junlin's heart that had been covering him for many days was blown away by the wind. He tightened his arms and wished he could rub Shen Yu into his body. Seeing that Shang Junlin was comforted, Shen Yu was relieved. He didn't want King Yu to become a barrier between them. As summer came, the weather gradually became hotter. The courtiers received the news that they would go to the summer palace this year and began to prepare. While preparing, they couldn't help but be curious. Why does His Majesty suddenly want to go to the summer palace this year? A few years ago, some courtiers proposed it, but they were all rejected by him. His Majesty has never enjoyed himself. This time, it may be because of you. No matter what the reason is, the successive emperors of Dahuan have all gone to the summer palace every year, except for our current His Majesty. To be honest, The summer in the capital is too hot. It's good to go there to avoid the summer heat. The one who spoke was the official who had written several times to ask His Majesty to go to the summer palace to avoid the summer heat. He thought that he would have to spend the summer in the capital until he resigned. He didn't expect the surprise to come so suddenly. The weather was getting hotter and hotter. Shun Yu's clothes were getting thinner and thinner. His body temperature was still as cold as before. It was very comfortable to hold him in his arms. Shang Junlin held him in his arms whenever he had time. This made Shin Yu suffer. Men were hot-tempered. In the winter, it was fine. He was a human-shaped big heater. Shin Yu nestled in his arms and felt a steady stream of heat. It was very comfortable. It was different in the summer. Every time he was hugged by Shang Junlin for a while, he would sweat all over. There was a small lake in Yuzhong Palace. A pavilion was built on the lake. Since the weather became hot, Shan Yu's favorite place became this pavilion. According to Shan Yu's preferences, the pavilion was decorated in a new way. There was light-colored gauze hanging around, and there was ice in the corner. A cool breeze blew over the water, bringing a burst of coolness. Shang Junlin finished his work and returned to Yuzhong Palace. He looked around the room but couldn't find Shin Yu. He walked straight to the pavilion. There had always been no shortage of ice in the palace. However, Imperial Physician Gu said that Shan Yu's body wasn't good, so he couldn't be too cold. There wasn't much ice in the room. Although Shin Yu was afraid of the cold in the winter, he was the one who was the most cold in the summer. After the pavilion was cleaned up, Shin Yu came here most often. Shang Junlin lifted the gauze and saw Shin Yu half leaning on the couch, reading a book. Young eunuch Ming was holding a fan and gently fanning Shin Yu behind him. The palace servant knelt down to greet him. Shin Yu put down the book in his hand and sat up. "Your Majesty, are you done with your work?"
Yes.
Shang Junlin walked to Shin Yu's side and sat down next to him. When he was setting up the pavilion, due to space restrictions, the soft couch inside was much smaller than the one in Jade Gate Palace. Shang Junlin could be considered to have fulfilled a small wish of his. As soon as Shang Junlin leaned over, he brought a burst of hot air. Shin Yu dodged to the side and was caught by the man. "Where are you hiding, Yu? It's so hot." Shin Yu refused to stick close to Shang Junlin. "There is ice in the pavilion. Let me hug you for a while." Shang Junlin firmly held Shun Yu's waist with one hand and did not let him go. "Your Majesty, don't you feel hot?" Shun Yu was helpless. Shang Junlin rubbed his cheek. "Yu's body is very cold, but Your Majesty's body is very hot." Shin Yu leaned his body away, wanting to stay away from the man. "Yu likes to snuggle into my arms during winter. Why do you dislike me now?" Shang Junlin pressed Shan Yu's back and pulled him into his arms. Shin Yu gave up struggling and half lay in the man's arms. "Your Majesty also knows that it's winter. There was ice in the pavilion, so it was not that hot." Shin Yu quietly lay there for a while, and the temperature of his body gradually dropped. He knew that the man would not let him go, so he simply found a comfortable position and continued to read the book on the side. "How is the use of ice in your room recently?" Shang Junlin asked Mu Shi, who was serving beside him. Mu Shi told him the amount, which was strictly according to Shang Junlin's instructions. Shang Junlin nodded with satisfaction. Shin Yu was speechless. He knocked his head against the man's chest. "Your Majesty has already given an order to the people in my palace. Are you still worried that I will use more ice? Yu, did you forget that you almost caught a cold last time because you were greedy for the cold?" Shang Junlin pinched his earlobe. Shin Yu lowered his head guiltily. The weather suddenly became hot a few days ago, and he could not stand it, so he asked the palace people to put more ice in the bedroom. If Shang Junlin had not found out and removed some ice in time, he would have most likely fallen ill because of the cold. After that, Shang Junlin strictly controlled the amount of ice in his palace. Shin Yu read the book for a while and suddenly thought of something. "Your Majesty, is it only the influential families in the capital that can use ice? Some big merchants can also use it. Why?" Most of the ice used in Dahuan in the summer was stored ice. Not to mention the huge amount of work, there were not many that could be preserved. Some families with the ability would store their own ice. Those who did not have this ability would choose to buy it. However, because of the quantity, the price was often higher, and ordinary people rarely bought it. I just suddenly thought of a way to make ice, and it's very simple. If we can make ice, the people in Dahuan can also use it. Xinyu said the method he learned from the book. As one of the golden fingers of the main character in the book, Shen Xingran, it brought him some benefits. What method? Shang Junlin was interested. When saltpeter is dissolved in water, it can be made into ice. Xinyu ordered people to bring saltpeter and water. After experimenting, he really got ice. Looking at the freshly made ice that was emitting cold air, Shun Yu's eyes flashed with a touch of complexity. In his previous life, when the king of Yu found out about this method, the first thing he did was to kill everyone who knew about it. Then he arranged for a group of mute slaves to make ice for him and sell it at a high price. In his previous life, Shen Yu did not know that the method to make ice was so simple. When he knew that the king of Yu used mute slaves to make ice, he thought that there was some secret behind it. This method is really convenient. Shang Junlin felt that the newly made ice was not much different from storing ice. Compared to storing ice in winter, it was much easier to make saltpeter. With this method, ordinary people can also use ice in summer. Mu Shi was so shocked by this scene that she could not close her mouth. After giving the things to Shang Junlin, Shan Yu did not ask any more questions. What Shang Junlin wanted to do with it was his business, as long as he did not end up as a money-making tool like the king of Yu. He knew that Shang Junlin would not do that, otherwise, he would not have taken out these things. Xin Yu wiped his hands and lay back on the couch. With the addition of a basin of ice in the pavilion, it was even cooler. The palace servants kept looking at the newly made ice. Their eyes were filled with curiosity. Shang Junlin also stood beside the ice and looked at it for a while before sitting back on the couch. Once the news of the new method to make ice was announced, it caused an uproar in the imperial court. Everyone knew how hot the summer in the capital was. Those who had the ability to store ice would definitely store more in winter. Those who did not have this ability could only buy ice in summer at a high price. If they could make ice in summer, it would bring more convenience. I have not announced the method to the public for the time being. Shang Junlin changed out of his court attire and walked towards Shun Yu. I will let the imperial court control it for a period of time. When the conditions are right in the future, I will decide whether to announce it or not. The imperial court would set the price. This could prevent the ice from falling into the hands of a small number of aristocratic families and becoming their money-making tool. It could also prevent some unscrupulous merchants from selling the ice at a high price to other places in Dahuan. Your Majesty can decide. Shun Yu did not have any objections. After the date of the trip to the Summer Palace was confirmed, everyone in Yuzhong Palace became busy. A large group of people headed to the Summer Palace. Shun Yu was directly arranged to stay in Shang Junlin's residence. The Summer Palace was built halfway up the mountain. As soon as they came up, they could feel a burst of coolness. Xin Yu squinted his eyes in satisfaction. Your Majesty did not arrange a place for me to stay? Xin Yu looked around at the decorations. There were many things that could only be used by the Emperor. A Yu naturally has to live with me. Shang Junlin did not give him a chance to refuse. He directly picked him up and walked inside. The palace servants lowered their heads and focused on their own matters. Xin Yu was already used to Shang Junlin carrying him here and there. He skillfully wrapped his arms around the man's neck and gently blew into his ear. I have been living with your Majesty. The ministers won't say anything, right? Shang Junlin's footsteps paused. His eyes darkened. He quickly put him on the bed and ran his fingers across his cheek. A Yu has to behave well. Chapter 93. Xin Yu was a noble, so naturally, he should have his own residence in the palace. The quality of his residence would show how favored he was. At the beginning of the arrangement, the people in the palace had allocated a good courtyard for Xin Yu. But Shang Junlin rejected it and arranged for Xin Yu to live in his residence. When they were in the palace, it was Shang Junlin's biggest regret that he couldn't move Xin Yu to his own palace. Now that he had the chance, he wouldn't let Xin Yu live in another courtyard. Xin Yu said those words to tease Shang Junlin. He didn't care what those officials thought of him. If he really cared about these things, he wouldn't have chosen to enter the palace in the first place. Shun Yu was gently placed on the bed by the man. Then, he hooked his arm around Shang Junlin's neck and didn't let him get up. Your Majesty, what do you want me to do? Shang Junlin rubbed Shin Yu's soft lips with his fingertips. With a little force, his fingers sank into her lips. What does a Yu think? Isn't spring already over? Shin Yu looked at Shang Junlin with clear eyes. Shang Junlin reacted for a while before he realized what Shin Yu was hinting at. He leaned over and covered the young man with his body. With a Yu by my side, why do I need to wait until spring? Shin Yu's tongue touched the man's fingertips. It was like a casual sweep, which easily aroused the desire in the man's heart. But your Majesty is going to see the ministers soon. Shin Yu blinked innocently, as if she wasn't the one who had deliberately aroused the man's desire. Shang Junlin suddenly withdrew his hand, pressed the young man to himself, and kissed him fiercely. The man's kiss could never be called gentle. It was like a storm, with a strong sense of aggression. Every movement showed the intention of eating the young man. Shin Yu was forced to raise her head and bear all the wind and rain that swept over her. A Yu, are you sure that I can't do anything now? Shang Junlin bit Shun Yu's lips and slowly retreated. Shin Yu's face was dyed with a layer of light pink. Her lips seemed to be painted with rouge. Her hair was spread out under her body, slightly messy. Your Majesty obviously started it first. The young man's eyes were watery and red. He lay down softly. Shang Junlin almost exhausted his lifetime of restraint, but he didn't do anything. I'll let you go this time. After he finished speaking, Shang Junlin got up. Shin Yu tilted his head and laughed softly. He didn't know when it started, but he liked to see Shang Junlin's helpless expression. Your Majesty, Shin Yu's eyes glanced at a certain place. No. After settling down here, he still needed to meet with the courtiers. This little time was not enough. Shin Yu laughed enough and slowly sat up. In fact, he was also a little moved, but it was not as obvious as Shang Junlin. He was fine after a while. I also asked Imperial Physician Gu to come over. If you are not used to it, let him take a look at you. Shang Junlin tidied Shan Yu's hair. Because he had helped Shen Yu recuperate, Imperial Physician Gu had become the person Shang Junlin valued the most in the Imperial Hospital. This time, Shang Junlin had also brought him along. Officials were allowed to bring their family members to the Summer Palace. Imperial Physician Gu was worried about leaving Gu Huai alone in the capital, so he brought him along. The other courtiers also brought their wives and favored children. The Summer Palace, which had been cold for many years, suddenly became lively. After Shun Yu tidied up, he brought Mu Shi out of the courtyard. This palace was built with the power of several generations of the great Huan dynasty's monarchs. As the monarch, the place where Shang Junlin lived was the best one. Young master, this place is so beautiful. The surrounding scenery was unique. Mu Shi couldn't take it all in. Yes, in terms of enjoyment, who can compare to the imperial family? This was the first time Shin Yu came to this summer palace. When the late emperor was still on the throne, Duke Shunbei doted on the concubine's son. Even if he could bring his family members here, he would never think of Shun Yu, the legitimate son. On the contrary, Shin Xingran and Madame Ru came here because of Duke Shunbei. After Shin Xingran went back, he showed off in front of little Shun Yu. Shin Yu thought at that time that he must come here with his own strength in the future to see what it was like. Now, not only did he come here, but he also lived in the most honorable place. However, he no longer had the same mood as when he was a child. Who did Duke Xinbei bring here? Shun Yu asked. It's concubine Zhou, who used to be at odds with concubine Ru. Mu Shi had already found out. Shin Xingran didn't come? No, he's still locked up by Duke Xinbei. Duke Xinbei had been fighting with the forces of the King of Yu for a while. The trouble caused by Shun Xingran was also solved after a lot of effort. Now, whenever he heard Shun Xingran's name, he would feel annoyed. How could he bring him out? Shang Junlin brought nearly half of the officials here. Although he said it was to avoid the summer heat, in fact, it was just a change of location to deal with government affairs. There were still a lot of memorials to approve every day. Because he was not in the capital, the workload was heavier than before. Xinyu saw that Shang Junlin was so busy every day that his feet didn't touch the ground. He sincerely felt that being the emperor was not a good job. Even if he was in the summer palace, Shang Junlin didn't relax his control of all kinds of things in the capital. Every day, the movements in the capital would be transmitted to the summer palace through a special channel. The summer palace was smaller than the capital. Xinyu bumped into Duke Xinbei several times. He didn't know if Duke Xinbei did it deliberately, but every time Duke Xinbei saw him, he didn't do anything, so Xinyu didn't care. Concubine Zhou, who followed Duke Xinbei, was warm and respectful to Xinyu, as if she didn't hit him when he was down in the past. Xinyu was too lazy to pay attention to them. Gradually, he didn't go out anymore. Young master, recently, there are a lot of good-looking young masters and young ladies around His Majesty. Do they really think that His Majesty is someone that everyone can covet? Mu Shi walked in angrily. Shun Yu put Shang Junlin's newly picked flowers in a vase. His Majesty will take care of it himself. He didn't know where Shang Junlin had learned recently, but he would bring some fresh flowers back every day. Some of them could survive, so Shun Yu asked the palace servants to find a vase and raise them well. Those that couldn't be dried were put in a storybook that he had already finished reading. Young master, aren't you worried at all? When Mu Shi heard the news, she was anxious to death. Now, she had completely recognized Shang Junlin's existence. She didn't want a third person to take away Shang Junlin's favor. Of course, she knew that as the emperor, it was impossible to have only one person in the harem forever. But she just couldn't accept that Shang Junlin, who said that he wouldn't accept any new people, had anyone besides Xinyu. She often walked outside these days and heard a lot of news. His Majesty had clearly said that, so why were these people still dreaming of becoming a member of the harem? Xinyu took a handkerchief and wiped his hands. He said neither too fast nor too slow. What am I worried about? What they think in their hearts is their own business. Can I care what they think? If they really enter the palace, what will you do? I brought you out to let you relax. Why are you more worried than in the palace? Don't worry, your young master won't let these things happen. Since Shang Junlin had promised him, he wouldn't have the chance to regret it. As for those who coveted Shang Junlin, he didn't mind doing what he said. Once they entered the palace, they couldn't blame him for not being able to get out. Xinyu thought that these words would only spread in a small circle. He didn't expect that when he went out for a walk with Shang Junlin, he would encounter them. Mrs. So beautiful. You're not inferior to Shen Guijun. As long as His Majesty sees you, he will definitely like you. But, Miss, don't say but. Eldest young master said that this is our best chance. If we succeed, Miss will be a concubine in the future. You won't have to worry about being casually married off. Inyang's life in the Fu will also be much better. You're right, the woman composed herself. Are you sure His Majesty will pass by here? Miss, don't worry. This servant has already asked around. You only need to wait here quietly for a while. His Majesty will come over. At that time, whether or not it succeeds depends on Mississippi at the corner. Xinyu elbowed Shang Junlin. His Majesty is really popular. If I didn't follow him out today, would he have a beautiful encounter with the woman in front of him? Is you jealous? Shang Junlin grabbed Shun Yu's arm and directly pulled him into his arms. He leaned close to his ear and whispered, from the beginning to the end, Jin only wants you. Jin thought you already knew. The conversation at the corner was still going on, but Shun Yu couldn't hear it. The wet touch spread from the back of his ear, little by little, until it reached his lips and stopped. Shang Junlin's lips were close to Shen Yu's skin. His hot breath sprayed on Shan Yu's face. I thought they had already given up. Shun Yu frowned. Shang Junlin had repeatedly expressed his attitude, but he didn't expect these people to still be unwilling. Shang Junlin's fingertips gently brushed the wrinkles between Shun Yu's eyebrows. How can they give up so easily? With the imperial power hanging in front of them, no matter how Jin expresses his attitude, they will still have this kind of heart. Do you think they are interested in Jin? No, they are interested in the power and interest behind Jin. Does His Majesty want to go out and see her? How could Xinyu not know this? Since ancient times, How many women who entered the harem were completely willing? Jun's Au is jealous. Why would Jun still want to see her? Shang Junlin suddenly picked up Xinyu, turned around and left. The leaves rustled down. Not far away, two women turned their heads and only saw the swaying branches. Did someone come by just now? I don't think so. This servant didn't notice anyone. Xinyu was carried all the way back to the bedroom. Eunuch Meng came forward and was directly reprimanded. Eunuch Meng didn't dare to stay and led all the palace servants out of the room. Xinyu was thrown onto the bed and pressed down by Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin was half a head taller than Xinyu and could completely wrap him under his body. Xinyu was uncomfortable being pressed down by Shang Junlin, so he pushed Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin didn't move away. Instead, he moved closer and stared at the young man under him with his long and narrow eyes. Xinyu narrowed his eyes and skillfully turned over to press down on Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin didn't expect Xinyu's actions, and his eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. Xinyu sat on Shang Junlin's waist with one hand on his chest and the other holding his chin. His Majesty attracts bees and butterflies. I want to punish His Majesty. Shang Junlin's tense body relaxed and his eyes flashed with interest. How does you want to punish Shun? Just punish His Majesty by not being able to move. Xinyu finished speaking and bent down. Her black hair poured down and spread over Shang Junlin's entire chest. Shang Junlin's Adam's apple bobbed violently. This was the sweetest and most torturous thing. Let Shin touch you. Shang Junlin couldn't hold back anymore. He turned over and held Xinyu down, then lowered his head and kissed him. The kiss went all the way down, accompanied by a light nibbling, and finally stopped at a certain spot. Xinyu moved uneasily and suddenly felt that he was wrapped in warmth. Don't. Chapter 94. Xinyu never expected that Shang Junlin would do such a thing for him. Xinyu could not hold on to the quilt under his body. He felt like he was in the middle of a storm. He was thrown up high and could not fall down. The flowers by the window were blooming beautifully. The branches reached into the room and shyly closed the petals. After a long time, Shang Junlin released him. His Adam's apple moved as he swallowed the food in his mouth. Xinyu was confused. When he saw this scene, his eyes were filled with turbulent waves. He even forgot what he wanted to say. Shang Junlin supported his body and moved upward. He found Xinyu's lips and leaned over. Xinyu tilted his head to avoid it. Shang Junlin turned his face. A storm was brewing in his eyes. Why are you avoiding me? Your Majesty did not rinse your mouth. Why do you dislike your own things? Shang Junlin found it funny. Xinyu did not answer. He also did not give him a kiss. Shang Junlin left a trail of kiss marks on Xinyu's cheeks and neck. Xinyu's heart was itching. He got up and casually rinsed his mouth with water. He leaned over again. Is this enough? As soon as he finished speaking, his kiss fell on Xinyu's lips. I want you. Accompanied by the sound of sucking and water, the man's voice was low and dangerous. Xinyu struggled. His body was so weak that he could not escape from the man's shackles. Xinyu frowned in discomfort when the place that had never been touched by anyone was suddenly visited. The man's kiss left his lips and covered his eyes. Relax. Xinyu could not relax. His body was stretched into a line. Shang Junlin tried several times, but Xinyu could not adapt. A thin layer of sweat appeared on their foreheads. Xinyu bit his lower lip to relieve the discomfort. Because of the pain, his face was pale. His lips were red and the corners of his eyes were red. His brows were tightly knitted. Kissing the side of his neck, Shang Junlin took a deep breath and resisted the urge to continue. Shang Junlin had been worried that Xinyu might not accept him easily, but he did not expect that things would be so difficult at the last moment. After the finger left, Xinyu felt a little better. He raised his hand and touched the sweat on the man's forehead. Your Majesty, please solve it yourself. How can you be so heartless? Shang Junlin closed the distance between him and Xinyu. Xinyu was firmly restrained by the man. She felt guilty and turned her face away from Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin pressed his thumb on his rosy lips and said in a low and hoarse voice, "Ayu, can you help me in another place?" Shin Yu pursed his lips. Ayu even dislikes his own things. I won't force you. Other than here. Shang Junlin touched Shin Yu's lips. His eyes were dark. There are other places where you can help me. I'm afraid that Ayu will be tired today. After Shang Junlin finished speaking, he kissed the young man's lips again. This time, his actions were swift and ruthless. Shin Yu was once again thrown up high by the churning waves. His tightly clenched fingers were forcefully separated, and the gaps between his fingers were invaded as he interlocked his fingers with Shang Junlin's. The sky gradually darkened. During the ups and downs, Shin Yu was awakened by the man's actions several times. He was very tired. However, Shang Junlin was in high spirits and did it again and again. Unrestrained, Shin Yu did not remember when he fell asleep. When he woke up again, the sky was already bright outside. His body was very fresh. It seemed that he had been washed. His clothes were dry, and the bedding had been changed. Shin Yu moved and instantly felt sore all over his body. Hiss! At the end of last night, Shin Yu wanted to directly kick the man out of bed. However, every time he stretched out his leg, the man would grab it and play with it. After suffering a few losses, Shin Yu could only let him do as he pleased. Shin Yu did not know how others were like, but he knew that Shang Junlin's energy was definitely not something a normal person could have. Last night, he might have been stimulated and did it for longer than usual. It was more than just a little tired. Shin Yu rubbed his sore wrist and wanted to sit up. Shang Junlin came in with a bowl of hot porridge and saw Shin Yu getting up. The young man's face was flushed. His eyebrows and eyes were wrinkled. His lips were especially red and covered with a layer of water, like a ripe fruit that was tempting to be picked. As he moved, his thin clothes slid open, revealing a mottled area. Shang Junlin walked quickly to the bed, put the porridge aside, and helped Shin Yu get up. Are you hungry? Shang Junlin calculated the time and came back with the porridge. Shin Yu just opened his eyes. A little. Shin Yu had not rested for almost the entire night. He looked tired. Knowing that he loved cleanliness, Shang Junlin asked the palace servants to bring hot water. After washing up, Shin Yu put on a coat and moved to the soft bed. He was not very comfortable and was not in a good mood. Shang Junlin fed Shin Yu spoonful by spoonful of porridge. Seeing that he was still a little tired, he asked, "Do you want to sleep for a while more?" Shin Yu did not want to sleep anymore. Shang Junlin accompanied him for the whole day. In the evening, he was called away by the minister for a meeting. Shang Junlin dilly-dallied and refused to leave. Shin Yu pushed him. "Your Majesty, you should go to your business." Shang Junlin had no choice but to go. When he came back, Shin Yu had already fallen asleep on the soft bed. Under the candlelight, Shang Junlin stared at his face for a while. Then, he gently picked him up and put him on the bed. Perhaps he was too tired the night before. Shin Yu did not wake up even after being carried around. The next day, Shin Yu was still a little tired. Shang Junlin called Imperial Physician Gu to examine him. After Imperial Physician Gu finished checking his pulse, he glanced at Shang Junlin and lowered his head to think about the wording. "Imperial Physician Gu, if you have something to say, just say it." Shang Junlin held Shin Yu and massaged Shun Yu's finger bones with one hand. Imperial Physician Gu made up his mind and tried to speak in a calm tone. "Your Majesty has not fully recovered. Your Majesty needs to control your sexual activities." Shang Junlin paused. "I understand." Imperial Physician Gu prescribed the medicine and left. On the way back, he shook his head and thought, "Your Majesty has worked hard." Shin Yu was in a daze for 3 days. On the 4th day, he finally recovered. "Have you heard anyone talking about entering the harem these days?" Shin Yu brewed a pot of tea for himself and asked Mu Shi. "No. Her Majesty has warned those families who had thoughts about it. Now, at least they don't dare to show it on the surface." As for what they thought in their hearts, Mu Shi felt that her young master was right. How could she care about what these people thought in their hearts? Since the matter had been solved by Shang Junlin, Shun Yu did not ask any more questions. Her Majesty has asked someone to make a swing. Do you want to sit on it? Mushi saw that Shun Yu was in a good mood today and suggested. Shin Yu had been cooped up in his room for a few days. He also felt that it was time to go out for a walk. The swing in the courtyard was very different from the one in Yuzhong Palace. Shin Yu walked over and touched it. Then, he sat down. The swing was set up under an ancient tree. The ancient tree was lush with branches and leaves, blocking the sunlight overhead. Shin Yu took a miscellaneous book and slowly flipped through it. Who was trespassing? There was a noise outside. Shin Yu pulled his mind out of the book and asked, "What's going on?" "I don't know." Mushi looked confused. "I'll go and take a look." After Mushi finished speaking, she turned and walked towards the source of the noise. After a while, Mushi came back. Her face was a little ugly. "It's a woman. She wants to see Her Majesty." The establishment of a new department in the Independent Ministry of Works had been put on the agenda. Shang Junlin had been busy with this matter recently. Now, he happened to be discussing it with the Prime Minister and others. Did she say the reason? Shun Yu put down the book. No. She shook her head. She didn't summon anyone. The guards didn't let her in. She insisted. I sent someone to send her away. Even in the temporary imperial residence, it wasn't easy to see the emperor. Shin Yu and Shang Junlin's residence was heavily guarded. If there was no summon, the guards wouldn't let anyone in. Ordinary people wouldn't force their way in for no reason. It was a serious crime to disturb the emperor. Shin Yu got up from the swing. Take me to see her. Before he got close, Shun Yu heard a woman's gentle voice. This voice gave Shun Yu a familiar feeling. When he got closer, he saw that it was the person he met a few days ago. After he came back that day, Shun Yu went for wool and came home shorn. He almost got himself killed. Now that he saw her, he suddenly felt a dull pain somewhere. That day, except for not going in, he did everything he should and shouldn't. In the end, Shun Yu was so tired that he couldn't even lift a finger. What's going on? Shun Yu coughed softly and interrupted the confrontation. Gue Jun. The guard bowed. This woman said that His Majesty left something with her. She wants to return it to His Majesty in person, but she didn't summon anyone, so I can't let her in. How could His Majesty leave something with you? Shin Yu looked at the woman standing outside indifferently. The woman bit her lip. His Majesty went to Yin Yu Pavilion that day. This humble woman met His Majesty there. The thing was also left there. Give it to me. I will give it to His Majesty for you. Shin Yu didn't intend to let her in. This woman coveted the imperial harem. Her purpose for coming here today was probably not pure. No, I have to give it to His Majesty personally. The woman took a step back, her eyes red. Shin Yu narrowed his eyes. Is your purpose to return the thing, or to see His Majesty? If it's the former, just give it to me. If it's the latter, I advise you not to waste your time. Her purpose was naturally the latter. That day, she waited in the woods until late at night, but she didn't see His Majesty. When she went back, she was puzzled. The next day, she heard that His Majesty was furious and forbade them to have any evil thoughts. She was silent for 2 days. In order to relieve her depression, she got lost. She didn't expect to pick up the jade pendant that His Majesty dropped. At that moment, she realized that her opportunity had come. She also heard that Shen Guijun was a very scheming person in the palace. Her brother warned her not to confront this person. She didn't achieve her purpose, so she didn't want to make enemies easily. But she didn't expect that Shen Guijun would be so direct. Being looked at by those clear eyes, it seemed that all the calculations in her heart couldn't be hidden. How can Guijun slander this humble woman like this? This humble woman just wants to return the jade pendant that His Majesty left in this humble woman's hands. There is no other intention. No matter what, she must never admit her thoughts. Jade pendant? His Majesty left the jade pendant with you? The young man's expression was unreadable. The woman felt a little uneasy in her heart, but she still nodded. I was wondering why His Majesty lost a jade pendant 2 days ago. It turns out that you picked it up. Shang Junlin didn't care if it was lost. It was only when Shunyu found that the jade pendant he wore was missing a piece that he realized that it was lost. Since it was lost, there is no need to take it back. But after all, it is His Majesty's personal item. It's not good to leave it in the hands of outsiders. Mushi, give me the jade pendant. Mushi walked to the woman's side. Regardless of her struggle, she took the jade pendant back and handed it to Shunyu. Shunyu didn't even look at it and directly threw it on the ground. In an instant, the jade pendant was smashed into pieces. It's something that has been touched by others. Just destroy it. Chapter 95. This was worn by His Majesty. Aren't you afraid that His Majesty will blame you for destroying it? The woman didn't expect that Shunyu would be so unreasonable. Her face changed greatly. If I fell, then so be it. His Majesty will only care about whether I fell to my heart's content. Shunyu turned around and said coldly, "Send this girl back?" How could the woman be willing to accept that her plan had failed before it could be implemented? She looked at the jade pendant that was broken by Shunyu, and her eyes flashed with resentment. What was worse than the thing that she wanted was easily taken away by others. She had waited for a long time for this opportunity, but it was easily destroyed by others. Moreover, it was in such a way. How could she not see that Shunyu was warning her not to touch something that she shouldn't covet? But why? Shunyu was just luckier than her. He entered the palace one step ahead of her. Why did he put on such a high and mighty attitude? Guejun, does His Majesty know that you are so jealous? I just wanted to return His Majesty's jade pendant, but you directly broke it. Shunyu stopped and looked at the woman coldly. I thought everyone knew that I am a person who can't tolerate sand in my eyes. Don't let me know that you have ideas that you shouldn't have in the future, otherwise. The pressure in the young man's eyes was like a mountain. The woman had no doubt that if she really dared to do anything, her end would be the same as the jade pendant. She was too careless. She almost forgot that there was a woman who deliberately fell on His Majesty and was still detained in Yuzhong Palace. She began to feel fear in her heart. No matter how ambitious she was just an unmarried woman. In terms of knowledge, how could she compare with Shunyu? What's the noise? A man's low voice sounded from behind. Shunyu tilted his head and saw Shang Junlin coming from another direction. He was originally discussing things with the Prime Minister and several ministers. Suddenly, he received the news that a woman wanted to see him. She also said that she wanted to return his personal belongings. Shang Junlin directly sent the messenger away and didn't plan to come out to meet her. If he didn't hear that Shunyu went out, he would never come out. Greetings, Your Majesty. Everyone present bowed. Shang Junlin excused their salutations. He didn't even look at the delicate woman who was about to cry and walked straight to Shunyu. Is you feeling better today? Ever since that night, Shunyu had always been listless. Shang Junlin was extremely anxious. He only felt relieved after Imperial Physician Gu confirmed that Shunyu was fine. For the next few days, he did not dare to cause trouble. It was rare for Shunyu to have a good rest for a few days. His spirit had also slowly recovered. On the way here, Shang Junlin already had a rough idea of what had happened. She was just a stranger to him, so he was too lazy to waste his time on her. Shunyu snuggled into Shang Junlin's arms. Your Majesty, I broke your jade pendant. You won't blame me, right? You doesn't like it. It's just a jade pendant. Shang Junlin held Shunyu's hand and put it in front of his eyes. Is you injured? Shunyu was a little unhappy at first, but she was amused by Shang Junlin's action. It's just a jade pendant. How can I be injured? Next time, if you don't like it, you can let the people around you break it. You don't have to do it yourself. Shang Junlin pinched Shunyu's fingers. That woman. Shunyu looked sideways at the woman outside. The woman finally met Shang Junlin. She originally wanted to do something. It would be better if she could plant the seed of Shunyu in Shang Junlin's heart. However, she didn't expect that Shang Junlin didn't care about the others at all. He didn't even look at her. The woman's face was pale, and she was on the verge of collapse. However, no one pitied her because of her weakness. How many people from the palace were innocent? They could see the woman's true intentions at a glance. Now that she didn't achieve her goal and the emperor didn't punish her, why did she pretend to be bullied? Someone, send her back. She will be punished by copying the precepts for women. Order the elders in her family to take good care of her. I don't want the same thing to happen again. Yes. Also, Shang Junlin slowly rubbed Shen Yu's fingers. Next time, don't let these people cause trouble in front of the emperor. If they disturb the emperor's mood, I will hold you responsible. Yes. Your Majesty allowed these people to bring their family members here. It's a grace to them. Who would have thought that these people would have so many thoughts behind the scenes? Shen Yu certainly knew that the woman wasn't the only one with such thoughts. Whether it was for power or for other reasons, there would always be moths to a flame. Shang Junlin was swift and decisive. He didn't leave any face for the woman. Not long after, everyone in the palace knew that the daughter of the assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue had failed in her attempt to get close to the emperor and had been disliked. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue flew into a rage. Lock up this disgraceful thing. Without my permission, no one is allowed to let her out. He knew that his daughter had some thoughts. To be honest, he was also a bit moved. Looking at Shun Guojuan's current treatment, he knew that if his daughter entered the palace and was favored, what kind of glory would it be? Because of this, he didn't stop his daughter's actions. However, he didn't think that Shang Junlin would be so merciless. Now, who didn't know what his daughter had done? She received mocking looks from others. Because the assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue was born in an aristocratic family, his path had been paved by his elders. He was just waiting to be promoted to the Minister of Revenue. When had he ever encountered such a situation? Your Majesty is putting the face of the Tan family on the ground and stepping on it. The assistant minister of the Ministry of Revenue fiercely downed a cup of wine. That's not all. Your Majesty has his own ideas. Do you really think that he's only targeting the Tan family? He clearly wants to use this matter to make an example out of us and warn us not to have thoughts that we shouldn't have. Your Majesty's prejudice against the aristocratic families isn't new. Originally, we planned to send more sensible aristocratic daughters into the palace to ease the tension between the two sides. Who would have thought that Your Majesty would be blinded by a man and not want anyone else? Our plan can only be put on hold. Allowing those rumors to spread was also a form of probing. In the past, the emperor lived in the depths of the palace and had almost no contact with the aristocratic daughters. In the palace, as long as the emperor wanted, he could see the aristocratic daughters at any time. Perhaps the emperor would change his mind after seeing how good the aristocratic daughters were. The emperor didn't care about those private rumors. Just when they thought they saw an opportunity, the emperor's fierce attack directly shattered their fantasies. The emperor didn't tacitly agree. He clearly wanted to find an opportunity to deal with it once and for all. After this, who would dare to have such thoughts? No matter what they thought, at least they wouldn't dare to show it. Every family would restrain their family and their subordinates. The aristocratic families couldn't afford to lose face. After Shang Junlin's outburst, Shun Yu didn't encounter similar things again. Mushi also said that no one dared to talk about these things in private. Shin Yu was quite satisfied with this result. No one would be happy if their own people were constantly being targeted by others. Even during the hottest time of the year, the temperature in the palace wasn't too high. It was even a little cold at night. Finally, Shang Junlin wouldn't be despised when he hugged Shin Yu to sleep. A batch of memorials was sent from the capital every 3 days. Today was the day to send memorials again. Shin Yu watched Eunuch Meng instruct a group of eunuchs to move the memorials into the study room. Then, he moved the memorials out and sent them back to the imperial city. Why are there so many memorials this time? Shin Yu walked in and took a look. He was surprised. Those aristocratic families who stayed in the capital received news about the palace. Most of them are probably related to that incident. After Shang Junlin finished reading the memorials in his hand, he put down his pen and instructed, Meng Chong, sort these memorials and put the less important ones aside. Eunuch Meng deftly went to sort the memorials. Shang Junlin led Xinyu out of the study room. The people in the capital have already used ice. The Ministry of Works asked me for the recipe to make ice, but I haven't given it to them yet. Now, the people who were arranged to make ice were all people from the imperial farmsteads. These farmsteads belonged to Shang Junlin. Shang Junlin had specially instructed them not to leak the recipe to make ice. Your Majesty, don't give it to them yet. Xinyu suddenly thought of another use of saltpeter. To make weapons with great lethality. After the new department is established, I want to put the recipe there. Shang Junlin was talking about the Bureau of Natural Resources that was being prepared by the Imperial Court. It was independent of all the departments in the Imperial Court and directly under the Emperor. At the beginning, it was agreed that the officials in the Bureau of Natural Resources would not have the same power as the 6 ministries. After this plan was put forward, not many people opposed it, except for the Minister of Revenue. After the Bureau of Natural Resources was established, a lot of money was bound to be invested. The Minister of Revenue valued the money in the national treasury more than anyone else. He only wanted to spend every penny on the blade. I want the Bureau of Natural Resources to be completely separated from the Imperial Court. If the profits from the things made can be used as the cost of the next research, then we won't be restrained by any forces in the Imperial Court. I want a pure Bureau of Natural Resources that won't have too many entanglements with other officials. Shang Junlin explained his plan. Xinyu felt that this was quite good. Did the Minister of Revenue impeach me again? Ever since that incident, the Minister of Revenue didn't like Xinyu. He could find a reason to impeach Xinyu no matter what he did. He also did a lot of things that deliberately distorted the facts. You, don't worry. I will avenge you. Shang Junlin had also been eyeing the position of the Minister of Revenue for a long time. The two strolled to the lake. The lotus flowers in the lake were growing well. An exquisite boat was parked on the shore. Xinyu pulled Shang Junlin over. Your Majesty, do you know how to row a boat? A little. Then he knew how to row a boat. Your Majesty, how about we row a boat? Seeing the interest in Shun Yu's eyes, Shang Junlin didn't refuse. Eunuch Meng wanted to call a few imperial bodyguards who knew how to row a boat over, but Shang Junlin refused. He got off the boat first, then took Xinyu. The boat wasn't big, just enough to accommodate 2 people. Shang Junlin rowed the boat to the center of the lake and stopped. Xinyu reached out to the lotus heads not far away. He successfully plucked one, broke it open, and put one into his mouth. It was so sweet. Shang Junlin saw that Xinyu liked it, so he rowed the boat closer. He plucked some and put it beside Xinyu. You likes it. When we go back, I'll ask the kitchen to make some lotus seed snacks for you. Do you have them in the palace? Of course. There are many different kinds of lotus flowers in the palace. The weather in the temporary imperial residence was cool. Even if the sun shone down, it wouldn't be too hot. Shang Junlin was afraid that Shun Yu would get sunburned, so he broke off a lotus leaf and held it above Shun Yu's head. Xinyu ate the lotus head. It was sweet in his mouth. He peeled one and put it beside Shang Junlin's mouth. Your Majesty, have some too? Xun Yu's hands were very white. Under the sunlight, his fingers became more lustrous. It was hard to tell whether the lotus seed or his fingers were more attractive. Shang Junlin's Adam's apple bobbed up and down. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.